Huang Rong stroked his hair and softly said, "Guo'er, I won't keep anything from you anymore. In the past I didn't like your father, which is why I have always disliked you. But from now on I will treat you well. Once my body has recovered, I will teach you all the martial arts I know. Uncle Guo said he will do the same thing as well." Yang Guo was feeling sadder. He cried even louder and choked. "Auntie Guo, there are many things that I've kept from you. I'll tell you everything." Huang Rong stroked his hair and said, "Today I'm very tired. It won't be too late if you tell me in a few days. All you've got to do is be a good child and I'll be happy. When the beggar clan's meeting is on, come and take a look." The two of them spoke with their true feelings under the tree and managed to scatter away the mutual dislike that they used to have for each other. As they finished, Yang Guo's tears turned into a smile. He remembered the faith and love that Guo Jing had in his words to him. This is the first time he had felt so warm and affectionate since he and Xiao Longnu split up. After speaking for a while, Huang Rong felt a slight pain in her stomach. She slowly got up and said, "Let's go." She held his hand and they slowly walked. Yang Guo thought that he should tell her the news of the Hong Qigong's death and said, "Auntie Guo, I have something very important I have to tell you." Huang Rong just felt the Kai in her Dan Tian was uncomfortable and not fluent. She frowned and said, "Tell me tomorrow. I'm not feeling well." Yang Guo saw that she was pale and couldn't help from worrying. He felt her hand was slightly cold. He became bold and secretly circulated his Kai and sent a warm energy from his hand into her. When he and Xiao Longnu were practicing the Jade Heart Manual on Mount Jiangnan, he had become very fluent in this technique of passing energy through the palms. But he was afraid that his and Huang Rong's internal energy would clash with each other, so at the start, he only sent a little. Afterwards, when he felt no resistance, he started to increase the energy. Huang Rong felt the internal energy that he was passing on was soft and concentrated. It was very different to the internal energies of the Quanjin sect. It was soft and fluid. It wasn't below the skilled fighters of Quanjin. Her body had a use for it. And in a short while she felt the opposing Kai and her blood flow became more fluid and comfortable. Her cheeks glowed. She was surprised. Where did the child learn this advanced internal energy? She smiled at him. Just as she was about to ask him, Guo Fu called out from afar, "Mother, mother, guess who's here?" Huang Rong laughed and said, "Today all the heroes of the world are gathered here. How do I know who's here?" She suddenly had a thought and said happily, "Ah, it's the Wu's martial uncles. I haven't seen them for many years." Guo Fu said, "Mother, you are really clever. How did you get it in one guess?" Huang Rong smiled and said, "What's hard about that? The Wu brothers never leave your side. Since they're not following, it must be because their relatives have arrived." Yang Guo has always been assured of his intelligence, but when he saw that Huang Rong predicted things like a god, he couldn't stop himself from being startled and in awe of her. Huang Rong continued, Congratulations, you can learn another advanced martial art, but I'm afraid that you might not be able to learn it." Guo Fu asked, "What kung fu?" Yang Guo blurted out, "The solitary Yang finger." Guo Fu ignored him and said, "What do you know?" "Mother, what kung fu is it?" Huang Rong laughed and said, "Hasn't Brother Yang mentioned it?" Guo Fu said, "AI, so Mother told you." Yang Guo and Huang Rong both smiled and didn't say anything. Huang Rong thought, Guo'er is very intelligent. He's 10 times cleverer than the Wu brothers. And there's no need to mention Far. He knows that the solitary Yang finger is Reverend Yiding's skill. The Wu brothers' martial uncles are here, and they will pity the Wu brothers because of their parents and will definitely teach them the solitary Yang finger. The brothers are always trying to please Far. Whatever they learn will be passed on to her. Guo Fu was surprised. Why did Mother tell Yang Guo first? Could it be that she wants to betroth me to that little beggar? When she thought about this, she gave Yang Guo a look and put on a silly face. Reverend Yiding of Dali has 4 disciples: fisherman, woodsman, farmer, and scholar. The Wu brothers' father Wu Santong is the 3rd disciple, farmer. Ever since the battle with Li Machu where he was wounded, he hadn't been seen since. The ones that have arrived for the hero's feast today are the fisherman, Si Shuyuyan, and the scholar, Zhu Ziliu. Whenever Huang Rong and Zhu Ziliu meet, they start to battle with their wits. They haven't seen each other for over 10 years, and as soon as they saw each other, they were at it again. After the greetings, Si Shuyuyan and Zhu Ziliu found a room, and they indeed did start to teach the solitary Yang finger to the Wu brothers. That morning, the Lu Manor was filled with countless heroes and good men. Though the Lu Manor was large, there were people everywhere. After lunch, the members of the beggar clan assembled in the forest outside the Lu Manor. The ceremony of the old chief passing the position to a new one is the grandest ceremony in the beggar clan. All the members from the east, south, west, and north no matter what rank gathered here. The heroes that were invited to the Lu Manor were also invited to watch the ceremony. Over the last 10 years or so, Lu Yaojiao had helped Huang Rong in running all the matters of the clan. He did things boldly and accepted the consequences. The members from the dirty, clothed, and clean-clothed factions all respected him. Elder Giant of the clean-clothed faction had passed away. Elder Liang has been incapacitated by illness, and Elder Peng had revolted and left. There wasn't anyone that could challenge for the position of chief. This is why this year's ceremony proceeded smoothly. Huang Rong acted accordingly to the clan's rules. After passing on the clan's historic treasure, the dog beating stick, to Lu Yaojiao, she and the rest of the members spat on him to complete the procession. His face and body was covered in spittle. Yang Guo saw that this procession was extremely strange. He was just about to go and tell them the news of Hong Qigong's death when suddenly an old beggar leapt up onto a rock and said loudly, "Chief Hong Lao has an order. He told me to tell everyone." When the clan members heard this, they all gave a cheer. They hadn't had any news from Hong Qigong for over 10 years. They all missed him. Now they heard that he had news. They all called out in joy. An old beggar in the crowd called out, "Blessings to Elder Hong Lao." The crowd all cheered. Their voices really shook the earth. Cheer followed after cheer, and only after a while did it cease. Yang Guo saw that everyone was moved. Some even had tears on their faces. He thought, if a man can achieve respect like this, his life will not be in vain. Look at all these people's joy. How can I tell them that Hong Qigong has passed away? Never mind the fact that I'm a nobody. If I tell them such news, they might not believe me. Once they hear this, there'll be chaos. This isn't good news anyway. Why spoil things for them? He continued his thought. If they asked, how did Hong Qigong die? I can't keep the fact that he was dueling with Godfather from them. The Wu brothers know that I've learned the toad stance from Godfather. What reason have they got not to tell everyone this? There are many beggars here, and it would be unavoidable for some of them to be suspicious that I might have helped my godfather kill Chief Hong Lao. I'll have no way to argue against hundreds of mouths. After the meeting, I will explain everything carefully to Auntie Guo and allow her to tell them the news. He thought that it was fortunate for him that the old beggar dashed out and allowed him time to think. If he blurted it out, he would have caused himself a lot of trouble. He heard the old beggar say, "Half a year ago, I was on the Guangnandong Road in the Shao province and met Elder Hong Lao in Xinjiang and drank wine with him. He's very healthy and his appetite is great. His drinking ability is the same as before, and it's still the only one of its kind." The crowd of beggars all cheered with delight again. Within the cheers were sounds of laughter. That old beggar interrupted and continued. Over the last few years, Chief Hong Lao has killed many unscrupulous officials and evil scoundrels who have terrorized our citizens. He said he had heard news that there are 5 evil bastards called the 5 clowns of the Tibetan border, who are following the orders of the Mongols. They have done many evil things in places like Chuandong and Huguang. He said that he was going to take a look himself, and if it is true, of course he's going to take their lives. A middle-aged beggar got up and said, "The 5 clowns of the Tibetan border. They caused trouble a while back, but they move without a trace. Our brothers in Chuandong were not able to find them. Recently, there has been no news of them. Chief Hong Lao must have sorted out this problem." The beggars and heroes who watched the ceremony all applauded. Yang Guo was gloomy. How would you people know that after Chief Hong Lao and my godfather made the 5 clowns of the Tibetan border into invalids, the 2 of them left the world not long after? The old beggar continued. Chief Hong Lao said, "Right now the world is in a mess. The Mongols are slowly invading southwards, eating into our Song land. Those in our clan must have loyalty in our hearts, swear to kill our enemies and defend against aggressors with all our might." All the beggars agreed, and their spirits soared. The beggar said, "The government is in a mess, corrupt ministers hold the power, and we can't expect some rotten officials to protect the people and defend the land. They'll never be able to do this. The foreign aggressors are getting closer. Everyone must have the will to protect our country, and Chief Hong Lao ordered me to tell all of our brothers to remember the word loyalty." All the beggar clan members responded. They all called out, "We swear to follow Chief Hong Lao's orders." Yang Guo had never been taught much since he was young and didn't know how important the word loyalty is. He saw the beggars all trembling with justice and righteousness, and he couldn't stop himself from being touched. He felt that his making fools out of the beggar clan members before was wrong. After the meeting, the clan's matters were discussed. There was no need for the outsiders to listen, and they took their leave. When evening came, the Lu Manor was filled with lanterns and candles, all glowing brilliantly. There were over 200 tables altogether in the main hall, side halls, back and front halls, and the courtyard. Over half of the world's heroes attended this feast. This Heroes' Feast is an exceptional event, a once-in-a-lifetime event. If the host didn't have so many acquaintances who all respected him, it would be difficult for anyone to invite so many heroes of the Wulin world. Guo Jing and Huang Rong accompanied the main guests and sat in the main hall. Huang Rong arranged a place for Yang Guo, and he sat at the table next to hers. Guo Fu and the Wu brothers sat quite a distance away. Guo Fu was surprised at first and thought, "That person doesn't know martial arts. Why did mother give him such a good seat?" She had a sudden thought and couldn't stop herself from being alarmed. "Oh no, crap. Father said he was going to betroth me to him. Could it be that mother is listening to father?" The more she thought about it, the more frightened she became. She remembered how she saw her mother holding Yang Guo's hand while walking, looking very close. She also thought about how her father and mother respected each other. If her father wants to do this, mother would not disagree. She was worried and angry, she thought. "How can I get married to that little beggar?" She wanted to cry. Guo Fu forced out, "If you've any skill, then drive him away." The Wu brothers had originally just looked down on him, but after hearing Guo Jing saying that he wanted to betroth Guo Fu to him, they made him their enemy. Wu Ziyuan heard what Guo Fu said and thought, "Why don't I insult and embarrass him? He'll be humiliated in front of all these heroes." Master's wife has always favored those with a strong character. When the one named Yang trips up in public, Master's wife will not want him to be her son-in-law. He had just learned the solitary Yang finger from his martial uncle. Now was a good time to test it, he said. "Since he wants to pretend that he is a hero, I'll let him show off and then make him lose face." He stood up and poured 2 cups of wine. He went over to Yang Guo and said, "Brother Yang, you must be proud of yourself regarding these last few years. I give you a toast." When Yang Guo saw Wu Ziyuan coming towards him, he had seen him glancing over at Guo Fu incessantly, and his face had a sly look, showing that he didn't have any good intentions. He thought, he's come over here to give a toast, he must be up to something, but he wouldn't dare put poison in the wine. So he stood up and received the wine, he said, "Thank you." He drank the wine in 1 gulp. Just at this moment, Wu Ziyuan stretched out his index finger and touched Yang Guo's waist. He turned his body to block the view of others. He had sealed Yang Guo's laughing waist pressure point. According to his martial uncle, if you use the solitary Yang finger to seal an enemy's laughing waist pressure point, the opponent will laugh and call out. If the pressure point is unsealed, the opponent will keep on laughing without stopping. Yang Guo had already put his body on guard. How could he fall for the surprise attack? With Yang Guo's present skills, he would never be ambushed by his opponent's surprise attack. With Yang Guo's temper, normally he would not take this ill intent and would definitely counterattack fiercely. If he hadn't caught Wu Ziyuan out, then he would have sealed Wu Ziyuan's laughing waist pressure point instead. But after having that conversation with Huang Rong, he was feeling happy and relaxed, he thought. Although there is some animosity between us, you are still Uncle and Auntie Guo's disciple. I won't mess around with you. He secretly circulated the internal energy that Aoyang Feng had taught him. In a flash, all his body's veins circulated the opposite way. All his pressure points changed places. But because he wasn't upside down, and he didn't have much experience with this type of kung fu, after 1 inhalation and 1 exhalation, his body reverted back to normal. He needed to circulate his internal energy again to reverse his veins. But this short period of time, it was enough to render Wu Ziyuan's attack useless. Wu Ziyuan saw that after touching his pressure point, Yang Guo had a little smile on his face. He was still sitting in his original position, and there was no reaction from him. He was surprised and returned to his table. He quietly said, "Brother, how come the kung fu that martial uncle taught us doesn't work?" Wu Ziyuan told him what had just happened. Wu Dunru chuckled and said, "Your stance must have been wrong, or you've pointed to the wrong place." Wu Ziyuan quickly said, "What's wrong? Take a look." He raised his finger and then pointed to his brother's waist. The appearance, stance, and strength were exactly the same as the method that his martial uncle taught him. Guo Fu's lips pursed and she said, "I thought that the solitary Yang finger was something amazing, huh? It doesn't look like it's much use." She knew that the Wu brothers had learned the solitary Yang finger, but she herself didn't know it. She knows that they will definitely teach her eventually. She still had a feeling of unhappiness in her. Wu Dunru stood up and poured 2 cups of wine. He went over to Yang Guo and said, "Brother Yang, me and my brother haven't seen you for many years. Now we meet again. Junior also presents a toast to you." Yang Guo laughed in his heart and thought, "Your little brother has already shown his skills. Let's see what other great skills you have as the elder brother." He was holding up a piece of beef with his chopstick and didn't put it down. He stretched out his left arm to take the cup and laughed. "Thank you." Wu Dunru didn't try to hide it. He stretched out his right arm. His sleeve carried a gust of wind. He stretched out his finger to seal the pressure point on Yang Guo's waist. Yang Guo saw that the finger was coming in fiercely. His kung fu of reversing his veins was limited, and he was afraid that he would not be able to block this attack. He dropped his arm and used the slab of beef to protect his laughing waist pressure point. This move started second but arrived first. Wu Dunru did not notice this, and his finger went forward and pierced the slab of beef. Yang Guo placed his chopsticks down and said, "After drinking wine, it would be best to follow it with a slab of beef." Wu Dunru raised his hand and saw his 5 fingers holding onto a large piece of beef, its juice dripping everywhere. He couldn't hold onto it but couldn't fling it away. He gave a furious stare at Yang Guo and scurried back to his seat. Guo Fu saw that he was holding a piece of beef. It was very strange, and she asked, "What's that?" Wu Dunru's face turned red. He couldn't reply. Just at this time, the beggar clan's new chief Lu Yaojiao raised a cup and stood up. He gave a toast to all the heroes and then clearly said, "Our clan's chief Hong Lao has passed on an order, and he said that the Mongols are invading south and commanded all our clan members to defend our country against them with our lives. All the heroes of the world are gathered here today. Everyone here has loyalty in their hearts. We need to discuss the situation and come up with a plan that will drive the Mongols away, never to come back to the land of the song." After he finished, all the heroes stood up, a word here and there. Everyone had the same thought. Most of the heroes that attended this feast are patriots. When they saw that their country was close to danger, they all were worried, and now someone has raised this issue. All the loyal and patriotic heroes responded. A silver-bearded old man stood up. His voice was like a bell as he said, "There's a saying, a snake without a head will not move. We have loyalty in our hearts, but without a leader we will not be able to accomplish our goals. Today, most of the world's heroes are here. We need to elect a worthy, revered, and respected hero who will take charge and lead us." A lot of them shouted out. Someone called out, "Let the senior take charge. There is no need to elect someone else." The old man laughed and said, "What sort of class does a rotten old man such as I belong to? The great fighters of Wulin have always been Eastern heretic, Western poison, Southern emperor, Northern beggar, and Central divinity. Central divinity Elder Qingyang had passed away long ago. Eastern heretic island Master Huang does as he pleases by himself. Western poison does not belong to our group. Southern emperor is far away in Dali and is not a Song citizen. Only Northern beggar Senior Hong Lao can be the chancellor of all the heroes here. Hong Qigong is one of Wulin's most eminent men. Everyone agreed to this and stared to clap. No one had any other suggestions. A voice from the crowd said, "Of course Chief Hong Lao can be the chancellor of the heroes here. Apart from him, is there another who is as skilled, as revered, and has the ability to take on such an important position?" The voice was clear. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice but didn't see anyone. Actually, it was a very short person who had spoke out and was covered by the others around him. Someone asked, "Who said that?" The short man leaped on the table. He was about 3 feet tall, over 40 years of age. His face exuded a serious air. A few of the crowd knew that he was a good man of Jiangxi, Short Lion Lei Meng. The crowd wanted to laugh, but when they saw his fierce eyes, they swallowed their laughter. They heard him continue, "But Chief Hong Lao goes and comes as he pleases. Over the last 10 years, he has only shown himself once. But when we discuss the important matter of defending against the enemy, but have no way to call on him, what should we do then?" Everyone thought, "What he said does make sense." Lei Meng said, "Everything we are doing today is for protecting our country, not for ourselves. We will elect a vice-chancellor. Since Chancellor Hong Lao is roaming around the lands, we will follow the vice-chancellor's orders." In the midst of shouts and applause, someone called out, "Guo, Jing Hero, Guo." Someone else called out, "Chief Lu is the best candidate." Another person said, "The previous beggar clan chief is wise and clever, and she is the disciple of Chief Hong Lao. I elect Chief Huang." Someone called out, "Let the present master Lu." Another one called out, "The Quanjin sect leader Ma Yu. The eternal spring elder Qiu." Everyone discussed this. In this chaos, 4 people quickly entered the main hall. It was Hao Datung, Sun Guo'er, Zhao Zhaijing, and Zhen Zhaibing. When Yang Guo saw they had returned, he thought, "Huh, you want to go another round with me?" Guo Jing and Lu Guanying were delighted. They left their table to meet them. The Quanjin sect is famous for its orthodox martial arts. If there were not any skilled fighters from Quanjin attending today's Heroes' Feast, of course their reputation will be tarnished. Hao Datung whispered into Guo Jing's ear, "There is an enemy coming to cause trouble. Be careful. We have come back especially to bring this news." Guo Jing pondered. The blithe elder, Hao Datung, is one of the skilled fighters of Quanjin. There aren't many people in the world of Jianghu with better skills than him. He trembled slightly as he said these words. The enemy must be extremely powerful, he quietly asked. "A young Feng?" Hao Datung said. "No, it is the Mongol that I've suffered from before." Before Hao Datung could reply, the sound of a horn blowing was heard outside. Lu Guanying called out, "Greet the guest." As soon as he finished, tens of people short and tall stood at the front of the hall. There were many heroes that were eating and drinking happily in the hall, and all were slightly surprised when they saw these people suddenly enter, but they assumed that these people had come to attend the Heroes' Feast. They didn't see anyone they knew and didn't take much notice. Guo Jing passed on this news to Huang Rong. The both of them stood up, and along with the Lu couple, they went out to meet the visitors. Guo Jing knew the elegant and prosperous-looking Mongolian Prince Huo Du. The sharp-faced and skinny Tibetan monk was Huo Du's apprentice brother Darba. Guo Jing had met the two before. Though the two were extremely good fighters, their skills were below his. There was no need for him to be alarmed. He saw the two standing away from each other. A person in a red gown walked forward. The person was extremely tall and skinny. It was a Tibetan monk who looked like a bamboo tree. There was a groove on his head like a plate. Guo Jing and Huang Rong glanced at each other. Huang Yaoshi had told them about the martial arts of the secret school of Western Tibet before. When one has reached an extremely high level, the person's head will have a groove. This person has a very deep groove. Could it be that this person's skills are extremely high? How come they had never heard about such a highly skilled fighter from the Western Tibet Jianghu world? The both of them were on guard. They bowed to greet the visitors at the same time. Guo Jing said, "Everyone has come from afar. Come in and have a few drinks." He knew that they were the enemy and didn't use any fake pleasantries. Lu Guanying ordered his servants to set up another table. The Wu brothers have always helped their master and master's wife in general affairs. They directed the servants and arranged for a table to be placed at the best position. They kept on apologizing to the guests as they did this and asked them to move their seats. Guo Fu saw Yang Guo was sitting there comfortably without moving. She didn't like this one bit and thought, "You count as a hero. When all the world's heroes die, it still won't be your turn." She made a signal to Wu Ziyuan with her eyes and then mouthed in the direction of Yang Guo. Wu Ziyuan understood. He went over to Yang Guo and said, "Brother Yang, you need to move your seat a little." He didn't wait for his reaction and instructed the servants to move his cup and chopsticks to the table in the furthest corner in the room. Yang Guo's temper started to flare up, but he didn't say anything and just chuckled to himself. Prince Huo Du said to the tall Tibetan monk, "Master, I'll introduce you to the two most famous heroes in the Central Plains." Guo Jing was alarmed. "So he's the Mongolian prince's master?" The monk nodded. His eyes seemed to be open, but also appeared to be closed. Prince Huo Du said, "That person has been Mongolia's Western Levy Right General Guo Jing, Hero Guo, and that is Mrs. Guo. She is the beggar clan's chief Huang." When the monk heard the words, Mongolia's Western Levy Right General, he suddenly opened his eyes and looked around. He took a look at Guo Jing's face, and then his eyes half closed again. He didn't take the beggar clan's chief to heart. Prince Huo Du said clearly, "This is my mentor, the holy monk of Western Tibet. Everyone calls him Jinlun Fawang. The reigning Mongolian queen has assigned him the title of the first protector of Mongolia." Those words were said very clearly. All the heroes that were present heard everything he said. The crowd was stunned and looked at each other thinking, "We are here discussing the Mongols invading the south. Where on earth did this protector of Mongolia come from?" Yang Guo was even more alarmed. He remembered how Hong Qigong and his godfather praised the Kung Fu, the 5 clowns of the Tibetan border, calling it terrific. They told them to tell their grandmaster to come down and have a duel. Right now both Jinlun Fawang and the master of the 5 clowns of the Tibetan border, Darba, are here. While his godfather and Hong Qigong have both passed away, he was sad. He knew that this tall and skinny Tibetan monk must be extraordinary. Guo Jing didn't know how to confront these people. He just said calmly, "You have come from afar, please have a few drinks." After 3 rounds of wine, Prince Du stood up and opened his fan, revealing a delicate and beautiful peony flower. He said with a clear voice, "We have not received a hero's invitation, but we have come here to attend the hero's feast. We are uninvited guests, but when I considered all the worthy and admirable people that would be gathered here, I had to take the risk. The gathering of the world's heroes is a rare event. In my opinion, a chancellor needs to be elected who will organize the Wulin world in the interests of the world's heroes. What does everyone think?" Short Lion Lei Meng said loudly, "What you said is not wrong. We have already elected the beggar clan's chief Hong Lao as our chancellor. Now we are in the middle of the electing a vice-chancellor. What are your views?" Du chuckled. "Hong Qigong had passed away a long time ago. By electing a spirit as a chancellor, do you treat us all as dead people?" As he said this, all the heroes made a clamor. The beggar clan members were especially angry. All were shouting. Du said, "Fine, if Hong Qigong isn't dead, then please invite him here." Lu Yaojiao raised the dog-beating stick twice and said, "Chief Hong Lao is roaming the world. He never stays in one place. How can you see him so easily?" Du chuckled, without mentioning the fact that it isn't clear whether Hong Qigong is alive or dead, and even if he was alive and were sitting here with his martial arts and virtue, how could he compare with my master Jinlun Fawang? All the heroes of the world listened. Apart from my master Jinlun Fawang, there isn't a second person who can take the position of the Chancellor of Wulin. When the crowd heard these words, they all knew the reason these people had come here. They knew that the hero's feast would not be in the best interests of Mongolia, and so came here to compete for the place of Wulin's Chancellor. If Jinlun Fawang manages to take the place of Chancellor by virtue of his kung fu, the heroes of the Central Plains will of course ignore his orders. But the Han defensive force against the Mongols will have been severely weakened. Everyone knew that Huang Rong was wise and ingenious. They all turned their heads and looked at her, thinking, even if these people's kung fu was a lot stronger, they will never be a match for the few thousands of us that are here. Whether it is one-on-one or a mass brawl, we won't lose. Everyone just listened to Chief Huang's instructions. Huang Rong knew that today's matters would not be settled unless martial arts were used. A mass brawl will of course result in victory, but the opposition will not be convinced. She said clearly, "Right now, all the heroes here have elected Hong Qigong to be the Chancellor of Wulin. This Mongolian gentleman has another suggestion and wants to elect a person that no one here has heard of or seen, someone called Jinlun Fawang. If Hong Qigong were here, then they both could show their divine skills and duel to a result, but Senior is roaming the world and enjoying life. Killing Mongols and getting rid of our country's traitors, he didn't predict that today you would come here by your own choice. He isn't here to greet you. When he hears of this news later on, he would definitely regret his absence. Luckily, Hong Qigong and Jinlun Fawang both have disciples. Why don't we let the disciples represent their masters in this exchange?" Most of the heroes of the Central Plains knew that Guo Jing's skills were terrifyingly good and now in the prime of his life. He could be said to be the world's #1 fighter. Even if Hong Qigong came out right now, he might not be stronger than him. If he fights with the disciple of Jinlun Fawang, victory is certain. There is no way for him lose. Everyone called out and shouted loudly, shaking the tiles of the roof. When those in the side halls and back hall heard this news, they all rushed over. The front and back courtyard, the entrances to the room were full of people, everyone calling out to help enforce this suggestion. The numbers on Jinlun Fawang's side were small. Their voices could not compete. Years ago, Du had been defeated by Guo Jing in one stance. He thought that Guo Jing was a disciple of Quanzhen's sect. After that, he looked into who he was and found out about his background. His apprentice brother Derba and he were afraid that even if the two of them went up at once, they would most probably lose to this disciple of Hong Qigong, Hero Guo. But if they didn't follow Huang Rong's suggestion, they would not be able to challenge for the position of Wulin's chancellor. This change of events really was unexpected, and they couldn't think of a way to respond. Jinlun Fawang said, "Fine, Du, go ahead and compete with the disciple of Hong Qigong." Those words were extremely heavy. He said this all in one breath without a need to breathe in again. He had always lived in Western Tibet and thought that with Du's martial arts, he would have little competition in the Central Plains. The only people that he wouldn't be able to beat are the likes of seniors such as Northern Beggar, Eastern Heretic, and Western Poison. He didn't know that he had lost to Guo Jing before. Hu Du agreed, but then quietly said, "Master, that disciple of Hong Qigong is amazing. This disciple is afraid that he will not be able to achieve victory. I do not want to tarnish Master's name." Jinlun Faowang's face sank and said, "Could it be that you can't beat someone else's disciple? Go now." Hu Du was in a very embarrassing situation. He had kept the matter of losing to Guo Jing away from his master. Right now, he didn't dare to tell him about it in this final moment. He knew that his master has the ability to go through heaven and penetrate earth. He had no match under heaven. He thought that all that they had to do was to hurry to the hero's feast, and the position of Wulin's chancellor will be in their hands. How could he have guessed that he would have to fight with Guo Jing? In this urgent situation, a fat man dressed in the clothes of a Mongolian official went over to him and whispered a few words into his ear. As soon as Huo Du heard this, he was delighted. He stood up and opened his fan, fluttering it a few times before he said clearly, "I have heard that the beggar clan has a treasured martial art. It's called the dog-beating stick technique, or something. It is Chief Hong Lao's most powerful skill. Little Prince is brazen. I'll rely on my fan to break this skill. If I break this skill, then it appears the martial arts of Hong Qigong are merely mediocre." At first, when Huang Rong saw someone whispering into Hu Du's ear, she didn't take it to heart. Suddenly, she heard him mentioning the dog-beating stick technique. In just a few words, he had placed their most powerful fighter, Guo Jing, to one side. Who exactly came up with this plan? She took a look at that Mongolian, and then it became clear. She recognized that it was one of 4 elders of the beggar clan, Elder Peng. So he has gone over to the Mongols. He is now wearing Mongolian clothes and has grown a beard. His hat hung down, covering his eyes, and if she hadn't studied him carefully, she would not have been able to recognize him. Only he would know that the dog-beating stick technique is passed on from chief to chief only. Though Guo Jing's skills are high, he doesn't know this set of kung fu. These words were deliberately aimed to challenge Huang Rong and Lu Yaojiao. Lu Yaojiao had just started to learn the dog-beating stick technique. His understanding is limited and may not be able to use it. She herself will have to fight. Guo Jing knew that his wife's dog-beating stick technique is ingenious. It would be able to beat Huo Du. But in the past few months, her baby's Kai had moved, her body was not in tune. She cannot fight with someone else. So he got out of his seat and stood between the tables and said, "Chief Hong Lao has never used his dog-beating stick technique. Come and experience his 18 dragon subduing palms." Jinlun Faowang's eyes half opened and half closed. He saw Guo Jing moving out of his seat and standing up. He had an extraordinary air about him. He couldn't stop himself from being secretly alarmed. This person really is extraordinary. Huo Du laughed and said, "At Qingyang Palace in Mount Jiangnan, we met once before. That day you said that you are under the tutelage of Ma Yu, Qiu Chu Jai, and the other Taoists. Why are you now calling yourself a disciple of Hong Qigong's?" Guo Jing was about to reply when Huo Du continued, "A person having many masters is a common thing. Today, it is an exchange of kung fu between Jinlun Faowang and Hong Qigong. Though your kung fu is great, your skills come from a variety of schools. You cannot show Hong Qigong's real abilities." The crowd all called out, "If you've got guts, then fight with Hero Guo. If you haven't, scurry away with your tail hanging behind you." Hero Guo is Hong Qigong's disciple. If he doesn't qualify, then who can represent Hong Qigong? First, suffer under the 18 dragon subduing palms. You'll still have time to experience the dog-beating stick technique. Hu Du laughed towards the sky. As he laughed, he circulated his internal energy. Ha, 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 he, he. He drowned out the clamor made by the heroes, his voice shaking the flames of the candles in the hall. The heroes looked at each other, their faces losing color, they thought. Who would have thought that such a young man who looks like a well-to-do person have such strong internal energy? In a flash, it had become quiet. Huo Du said to Jinlun Faowang, "Master, we have allowed ourselves to be wronged by these people. At first, when we heard that today is the hero's feast, we rushed to attend from thousands of li away, but who knew that these people are cowards? Let's go quickly. If you unluckily become the chancellor of these people, it'll make our people say that you are in the same league as these people. Won't that tarnish your great name?" The heroes all knew that he was trying to anger them, wanting to force Huang Rong to come out and battle. But his words were extremely infuriating. It really was difficult for anyone to endure them. In the midst of these shouts and calls from the crowd, Lu Yaojiao showed his bamboo stick and walked forward, standing between the tables. He said, "I am the newly appointed beggar clan chief Lu Yaojiao. I have only learnt less than 10% of the dog-beating stick technique. I actually shouldn't use it. But if you insist on tasting the pain of the dog-beating stick technique, I'll beat you with a few stances. Lu Yaojiao's martial arts was already profound, though he hadn't learned all of the dog-beating stick technique. It had improved his martial arts a significant level. He saw that Huo Du was around 30 years of age. He thought that even with a great teacher, his internal energy will not be profound. He saw that Huang Rong wasn't well. Whether he wins or loses, he couldn't let her take the risk. Huo Du just wanted to ensure that he would not have to fight Guo Jing. He wasn't afraid of anyone else and immediately held his hand and bowed. He said, "Chief Lu, nice to meet you. There's no one better to exchange moves with than you." Huang Rong was secretly anxious, but she remembered that Lu Yaojie was the newly appointed chief. Since he had made the challenge, she couldn't stop him. Otherwise, she will question Lu Yaojie's clout and show that her power is above the chief's. She had to allow him to fight for a while and then decide what to do afterwards. The managers of the Lu Manor instructed the servants to move the tables, creating 7 or 8 tables worth of space, and added more red candles, lighting up the center of the hall as if it were daytime. Hudu called out, "Ready?" As he said this, his fan swept across. A gust of wind threw itself towards Lu Yaojie, carrying a slight fragrance. Lu Yaojie was afraid that the wind carried poison and quickly darted out of the way of the wind. Hudu's fan waved out. A ka sound was heard. The fan folded and formed an 8-inch long pressure point sealing stick and was thrust towards the enemy's side. Lu Yaojie's bamboo stick went forward. He ignored the threat of having his pressure point sealed and used the coil formulae to trip and lift. The dog-beating stick technique really was extremely ingenious. Its direction is extremely difficult to predict. Huo lightly leapt up to avoid this, but he couldn't have guessed that the stick would suddenly flip up fiercely and would hit his lower leg. He stumbled, leaped forward 3 steps, and stopped himself from falling down. The watching heroes all cheered and called out, "The dog's been hit! This will teach you the power of the dog-beating stick technique." Huo's face turned red immediately after this. He gracefully turned around and threw out a left palm. Lu Yaojie kicked out his left leg and swept with bamboo stick. The stick was in a flying dance. It kept on changing without stop. Huo was secretly alarmed. The dog-beating stick technique does live up to its name. He concentrated and used all his strength with the fan in his right hand and palm with his left. Lu Yaojie has yet to complete the final stage of the stick technique. He had victory in his grasp many times, but in the end it was a waste of his efforts. Guo Jing and Huang Rong watched from the side and kept on saying to themselves, "What a pity!" After another 10 stances or so, the weaknesses in Lu Yaojie's dog-beating stick technique began to show themselves. Yang Guo saw every stance clearly and couldn't stop himself from frowning. Luckily, the dog-beating stick technique name is famous, and as soon as it was used, Huo was struck in the lower leg. Huo was worried and didn't dare get too close. Otherwise, Lu Yaojie would have lost long ago. Huang Rong saw that something was wrong and was about to call out and tell Lu Yaojie to come back when Lu Yaojie suddenly used a stance of hitting the dog's back from the side. The bamboo stick flashed across and struck Huo's left cheek. But his stance was too heavy. The lightness of the skill was lost. Huo suddenly stretched out his hand and held the bamboo stick in his hand. He had no more worries and suddenly threw out a palm that struck Lu Yaojie in the chest and then followed it by a sweep. A kala sound was heard as Lu Yaojie's leg was broken. He spat out a pool of blood as he fell forwards. 2 7 band members dashed forward to support him. When everyone saw how ruthless Huo was, they were extremely angry and they all shouted and cursed. Huo displayed the gem green jade bamboo stick. He was proud of himself and said, "The beggar clan's treasure is the dog-beating stick, so it's nothing more than this." He wanted to insult the Central Plains' largest heroic clan. He held the dog-beating stick in his 2 hands and wanted to snap it in half. Suddenly a green image flashed. An elegant and beautiful young woman stood in front of him. She said, "Wait." It was Huang Rong. Huo saw that her movements were extremely fast and was in shock. All he could say was, "You." Her left hand swept across and her right hand scoured across his eyes. Huo quickly stretched his arm out, but by that time, Huang Rong had already snatched the dog-beating stick back. This stance of snatching the stick back is called snatching the stick from the dog's mouth and is one of the extremely advanced stances of the dog-beating stick technique. Years ago at the Mount Jun Beggar Clan gathering, Huang Rong used this technique to snatch the dog-beating stick away from Yang Kang 3 times. The changes of this stance are extremely mysterious. When snatching the stick in 100 ways, there would be 100 successes. Even a stronger opponent cannot avoid this. All the heroes cheered. Huang Rong returned to her seat with the dog beating stick by her side, leaving Huo in the middle of the room in an embarrassing situation. Though his martial arts were profound, he couldn't explain how Huang Rong snatched the stick away, he thought. Could it be that this woman knows how to perform illusions? He heard the onlookers ridiculing him. He glanced at his master and saw his face was not pleased. He thought that such a beautiful woman must have limited abilities, so he called out, "Chief Huang, I have handed the dog-beating stick back to you. Please come and exchange a few moves. You won't dare turn this invitation down, will you?" As soon as he said this, indeed there were people who thought that it wasn't Huang Rong who had snatched back the dog-beating stick, but it was Huo who handed it back to her so they can duel. Only people with high martial arts could see that it was Huang Rong who had used force to take the dog-beating stick back. When Guo'er heard these words, she was extremely angry. In her life, she had never seen anyone who dared treat her mother with such disrespect. A shua sound was heard as she took out her precious sword. Wu Ziyuan said, "Sister Fu, I'll help you vent your anger." Wu Dunru also had the same thought. The two of them leapt into the heart of the main hall at the same time. One of them said, "My master's wife's body is very precious." The other one said, "How can she fight with a ruffian like you?" The other said, "First experience little master's kung fu first before doing anything else." Huo saw that the two were young, but their movements were steady. They have been taught by famous masters, he thought. We have come here today to show off our martial arts and break the spirits of the Han martial artists. Fighting a few more rounds will be great. But there are many of them and few of us. If we induce a brawl, things would be hard to handle. So he said, "All the world's heroes, listen, these two little punks want to duel with me. If I do fight, then I'm afraid that people will say I'm bullying them. If I don't, I'm afraid that people will think that I'm afraid of them. Let's do it this way. We will agree to compete for 3 rounds. Whichever side wins 2 rounds, then the place of Chancellor goes to them. The fight between Elder Lu and me does not count. We will start again. Does everyone agree?" Those words were said with his status in mind, displaying his great generosity. Yu Jing, Huang Rong, and all the special guests discussed this quietly. They felt that it would be difficult to reject this suggestion. Today, apart from Huang Rong, who cannot come out and fight, the strongest people here are Yu Jing, Hao Datung, and Reverend Yiding's 4th disciple, Zhu Ziliu. Zhu Ziliu is a citizen of Dali, but he still had ties to this matter. Dali and Song depended on each other, and in the recent years, Dali has suffered the oppression of Mongols. It could be said that they shared the same enemy. Never mind the fact that he had a very good friendship with the Guo couple, he was duty-bound to help. They decided that Zhu Ziliu would battle with Huo in the first round, Hao Datung with Derber in the second, Guo Jing and Jinlun Fowing in the final round. Whether or not this plan would assure victory was uncertain. Suppose Jinlun Fowang's martial arts are so high that even Guo Jing can't withstand him. It wouldn't be inconceivable that they would lose all 3 rounds, and if that happens, they would really have suffered a crushing defeat. Before the decision was definite, Huang Rong suddenly said, "I have a way to guarantee victory." When Guo Jing heard his wife say this, he interrupted. "Asking Taoist how to fight Jinlun Fowing may be a bit too risky. If the victory or loss won't affect the overall result, then I'm afraid during that round the enemy might too be ruthless. It would be difficult to defend against him." He spoke frankly and didn't care that he counted as the 1st class C. Regarding Hao Datung as the 3rd class, C may be a bit too impolite. Hao Datung knew that this duel will affect the fate of the country. This was not the normal duels for fame that occurs frequently in the world of Wulin. If the position of the Chancellor of Wulin is taken by the Mongolian protector, not only will the Han martial artists lose face, they will also lose their spirit. The goal of uniting together and fighting against the invaders will be unachievable, he said. There is no need to worry about that. As long as it'll help my country, losing my life to that Tibetan monk is not important. Huang Rong said, "All we need to do is to win the first 2 matches, then there will be no need for the 3rd match." Guo Jing was delighted and agreed. Zhu Ziliu laughed and said, "I have an important mission. If I lost to that Mongolian prince, then I'd suffer a lifetime of insults from the world's heroes." Huang Rong said, "There's no need to be modest. Please go ahead." Zhu Ziliu went to the middle of the hall and saluted Huo with his hands and said, "In the first match, it will be me who'll be asking for some advice. My surname is Zhu, first name Ziliu. The things that I love most in life are poetry and literature. My kung fu is very coarse. I have come to request some pointers from you." As he said this, he searched himself. From his sleeve, he took out a pen. He circled it a few times in the air, looking completely like a scholar. Huo Du thought, these types of people will have profound skills. I cannot take it easy. He held his fists and returned the greeting and said, Little Prince requests pointers from Senior. Please show your weapon. Zhu Ziliu said, Mongolians are a barbaric nation. They have yet to be enlightened. Since you want some pointers, then I will point you in the right direction. Huo Du was furious. You insult my country. Then I can't spare you. He opened his fan and said, This is my weapon. Are you going to use a saber or a sword? Zhu Ziliu wrote the word pen in the air and laughed as he said, In my life I have always been associated with a pen. How would I know how to use other weapons? Huo Du concentrated on his pen. He saw the bamboo tube and the brush head. At the tip of the pen was half an inch of black ink. There was nothing special about it. It was completely different to the Chungang pen that people in Wulin used for sealing pressure points. He was about to ask about it when a girl in white entered from outside. As soon as Yang Guo saw this young girl, he was overjoyed. His chest felt like it had been struck by a metal hammer. He leapt from the corner of the room and hugged her. He called out, Goo goo, goo goo. That young girl was Xiao Longnu. After she left Yang Guo, she circled around the land a few times and then returned to the ancient tomb. Before she was 18, living in the ancient tomb was not hard for her. But after she met Yang Guo and experienced many twists and turns, she could never return to the way she was before, not caring about anything. Every time she sat on the chilled jade bed to practice her martial arts, she remembered that Yang Guo had slept on this bed. When she sat at the table eating, she remembered the times when she ate with Yang Guo. After practicing kung fu for a little while, she would become troubled and impatient. It was difficult to carry on. She spent over a month like this before she could endure it no longer. She decided to look for Yang Guo. She didn't know how she would treat him once she had found him. She didn't know anything about worldly matters, similar to a person from the mountains or wild lands. Now something had suddenly changed and was unfamiliar. She was completely at a loss. After she left the mountain, everything that she saw was new to her. How would she know the roads? Whenever she saw someone passing by, she would ask, Have you seen Yang Guo? When she was hungry, she would take other people's food because she didn't know that money was needed. She created a lot of trouble along the way. But when people saw that she was innocent and beautiful, they couldn't refrain from making her allowances. No one caused trouble for her. One day she heard two men talking in a restaurant. They said that the famous heroes of the world will be going to the Xingyuan's Heroes Feast at the Lu Manor. She thought that Yang Guo might be there, so she found out how to get there and headed for the Lu Manor. Apart from Hao Datung, Zhen Zhaibing, and Zhao Zhaijing, no one amongst the 2,000 present knew a thing about her. All they saw was that she was extremely beautiful. Everyone's heart felt touched. Sun Guo'er knew about this person but had never seen her before. Zhen Zhaibing's face was pale, his body trembled. Zhao Zhaijing looked at him and chuckled. Guo Jing and Huang Rong were greatly surprised with how Yang Guo reacted to her. Xiao Longnu said, Guo'er, indeed you are here. I've finally found you. Tears flowed from Yang Guo's eyes as he choked. You won't abandon me again, will you? Xiao Longnu shook her head and said, I don't know. Yang Guo said, Wherever you go, I will follow. There were over 1,000 people here in the main hall, but the two acted as if no one else was there, talking naturally. Xiao Longnu held Yang Guo's hand. She didn't know whether she was happy or sad. Though Huo Du's heart was moved when he saw Xiao Longnu, he didn't know that this was the girl whose hand in marriage he was trying to get years ago at Mount Zhangnan. He saw that Yang Guo's garments were ragged and torn, but the two of them looked very close. His heart was disgusted, and he said, We are dueling, go and find another place for this. Yang Guo was not in the mood to talk to him. He held Xiao Longnu's hand and went over to the side, and they sat down shoulder to shoulder on the rock base of a pillar. His heart was bursting with joy. Huo Du turned around and said to Zhu Ziliu, Since you are not using a weapon, we'll fight with our fists. Zhu Ziliu said, Not so. We Chinese are a polite nation, not like the barbaric Mongols. In a treaty, one uses a pen to communicate. The enemy has a pen but no saber, so who needs a weapon? Huo Du said, Since it is like this, prepare. He opened his fan and swept it across. Zhu Ziliu slanted his body, a step to the side, and swung his head. His left hand swept lightly across himself. The pen in his right hand went towards Huo Du's face. Huo Du moved his head to avoid it. He saw the opponent's movements were light and his stances strange. He didn't dare to attack, waiting to see through his kung fu clearly before making a decision. Zhu Ziliu said, The enemy's pen can sweep away 1,000 soldiers. You need to be careful. As he said this, the tip of the pen went forward. Hu Du learned martial arts in western Tibet. Jinlun Fawang was very knowledgeable. There was nothing he didn't know about the Central Plains martial arts. When Hu Du's training was drawing to a close, he decided to go to the Central Plains to make his name, and so Jinlun Fawang taught him how to defeat the proudest kung fu of the Central Plains' most famous sects. How could he know that he would meet up with Zhu Ziliu? The weapon he used was strange. His stances were unimaginably strange. He had never heard of such things. He saw the pen tip stroking across and hooking down. It was as if he was writing, but the places where the pen was pointing were the places of the body's main pressure points. Zhu Ziliu is the #1 calligrapher of the northern sky. Though he practices martial arts, he hadn't stopped studying literature. In the end, the more he practiced his kung fu, the further refined it became, and eventually the two arts became connected to each other. The solitary yang finger and calligraphy became one. This kung fu was his own invention. If the opponent was stronger but didn't have a background in literature, it would be extremely difficult for them to defend against this martial art. From literature and literature on martial arts came a kung fu where both literature and martial arts have reached an extremely advanced state. Luckily, Hu Du has studied under a Han scholar when he was young. He had read books and recited poems, and was able to defend against this attack. He saw the tip of the pen flashing across. In the calligraphy was the aim of sealing pressure points. In the pressure point sealing was the aim of calligraphy. It was like a silver hook and metal skull. The strokes were swift and powerful, and in the midst of this there was a leisurely and elegant air. Yu Jing wasn't versed in literature. As he watched, he thought this kung fu was extraordinary. Huang Rong's father taught her both martial arts and literature. When she saw this excellent kung fu, she couldn't stop herself from admiring and enjoying it. Yu Fu went over to her mother's side and asked, "Mother, he's holding that pen, stroking it here and there. What kind of game is that?" Huang Rong was concentrating on the battle and just replied, "The Fang Xuan Ling inscription." Yu Fu didn't understand and asked, "What Fang Xuan Ling inscription?" Huang Rong was absorbed in the battle and didn't reply. The Fan Xuan Ling inscription is a work written by the Tang minister Chu Sui Liang, and it is also a refined calligraphy style. The people before them have judged Chu's book and likened it to a girl from heaven scattering flowers. The calligraphy style was firm, graceful, and elegant, concentrating on creating beauty. Every stroke was airy, completely focusing on this aspect. Zhu Ziliu's solitary yang book finger uses a pen as the finger. Every stance was measured and cautious, like a pen writing a book. Though Hu Du did not understand the intricacies of the solitary yang finger, at least he had read the Fang Xuan Ling inscription before. He knew that the horizontal stroke will be followed by a vertical stroke. He defended well, and he didn't show signs of losing. Zhu Ziliu saw that he knew this style of calligraphy. He called out and shouted, "Careful! A cursive calligraphy style is coming!" Suddenly he took off his hat and shot it at him. His sleeve flew across the air, and he dashed forward madly, his stances not following the style. He looked as if he were mad, crazy, drunk. As if a spell was put on him, the pen's aim raining down, the finger moving like a dragon and snake. Guo Fu was startled and laughed as she asked, "Mother, has he gone mad?" Huang Rong said, "If he drank 3 cups of wine, then the pen would be even better." She picked up a wine pot and poured 3 cups. She called out, "Brother Zhu, drink 3 cups to further your enjoyment." The cup was in her left hand, the middle finger of her right hand flicked it, and the wine cup flew steadily across to him. Zhu Ziliu raised his pen and brushed down, forcing Hu Du to the side as he caught the cup, drinking it in one go. Huang Rong flicked the second and third cup over in the same way. Hu Du saw the two of them offering wine in the battle, not even noticing that he was there. He wanted to wave his fan and knock the cups out of the air, but Huang Rong followed Zhu Ziliu's pen's intent. She flicked out the cups in the gaps. Hu Du was unable to knock them out of the air. Zhu Ziliu drank the 3 cups dry and called out, "Thank you. That is very handsome, divine flicking finger kung fu." Huang Rong laughed and said, "Very spirited Zai Yan Tai." Zhu Ziliu gave a laugh and thought, "I have always thought that I am clever, but I am still a level below that girl. I have studied this skill diligently for over 10 years. Just one look and she saw through it." The work that he was using now was Zhang Su's Tai Yin Tai of the Tang dynasty. Zhang Su has been given the title of Cao Sheng, the saint of cursive calligraphy. Du Fu's poem, The Song of the 8 Drinking Immortals, says, Zhang Su's 3 cups passes onto Cao Sheng. The hat is removed, showing his head in front of the king, the pen descending on the paper like a fog. Huang Rong offered him 3 cups, firstly to acknowledge the class of kung fu he was using. Secondly, once the influence of wine increases, the calligraphy will be even better. And lastly, she wanted to dampen Hu Du's spirits. She then saw Zhu Ziliu write, "The bold man fights for the road." On the road word, the pen hooked up and brushed across Hu Du's clothes. The heroes all laughed as Hu Du retreated backwards. Leader of the Wulin Alliance. Jinlun Fawang's eyes sometimes opened and sometimes closed. It was as if he didn't care about what happened in the battle, but in actual fact, he saw everything clearly. When he saw Hu Du was losing, he suddenly called out, "Agu si jin de mi ma ha si deng, chi hu." The crowd didn't know what these Tibetan sentences were, but Hu Du knew. His master was reminding him not to defend so tightly. He needs to start using the ferocious wind, rapid thunder skill. Against the enemy, Hu Du started to whistle. The fan on the right and his sleeve on the left created a strong gust of wind, rushing forwards to Zhu Ziliu. The force of the wind was very strong. The crowd who were watching couldn't help but move backwards slowly. They heard him making thunderbolt-like noises with his mouth. They all thought that apart from using weapons, fists, and kicks, this ferocious wind, rapid thunder skill also uses the surprising calls of thunder to subdue and control the opponent. It is a very powerful technique. Zhu Ziliu's sleeve took flight. He carried himself proudly and matched him. The two of them went back and forth for over 100 moves. Zhu Ziliu had finished writing the Zai Yan Tai. The intention of his pen changed. His moves were slow and delayed. The pen strokes were fine and stiff, overflowing with ancient intent. Huang Rong soliloquized, "There's an ancient saying, the fine and obstinate direction leads to the soul. This stone carving of commending the wrong path. Never has there been such a display." Hu Du continued to use the ferocious wind, rapid thunder skill, but because the opponent's strength was strong, the power in his fan increased, as did the volume of his shouts and calls. The people who were watching the fight in the main hall could not stand still. Step by step, they retreated to the courtyard. Huang Rong saw Yang Guo and Xiao Longnu were sitting shoulder to shoulder by the pillar. They were only about 10 feet away from the battle, deep in conversation, completely ignoring the battle. The wind that Hu Du generated had completely no effect on them. She saw Xiao Longnu's belt floating in the wind, but Xiao Longnu was unmoved. She just stared lovingly at Yang Guo. The longer that Huang Rong looked, the more curious she became. In the end, she was concentrating on these two more than the battle between Hu Du and Zhu Ziliu. She thought, "That little girl looks like she possesses advanced martial arts. Guo'er and she are so close, I wonder which eminent master is she a disciple of?" Xiao Longnu was now 20 years old. She had lived in the ancient tomb all her life, avoiding the sunlight. Her skin was especially soft and delicate. Her internal energy was high. From her appearance, she looked like a 16 or 17-year-old. Before Xiao Longnu met Yang Guo, experiencing happiness, anger, grief, and joy was a rare thing for her. Emotions have the greatest harmful effect on the body and its appearance, and she had spent the last 2 years like a normal person. If she actually followed her master's teachings and practiced with a clear mind, not only could she meet her 100th birthday, but when she reaches that age, her appearances would be the same as a normal 50-year-old. Because of this, in Huang Rong's eyes, Xiao Longnu looked younger than Yang Guo. Her childlike and innocent air was even more obvious than Guo Fu. No wonder Huang Rong thought that she was a little girl. Now Zhu Ziliu's pen was becoming unsightly, but its power was becoming stronger. The delivery of the pen was like a spider web, strong yet soft. Hu Du was secretly alarmed. It was gradually becoming harder for him to grasp his kung fu. Jinlun Fawang shouted, "Ma mi ba mi gu si hai si?" No one knew what those 8 words meant, but the words shook everyone's ears, leaving a ringing sound in them. Zhu Ziliu was getting impatient, he thought. If he changes his technique again, I don't know when this battle will end. I am fighting in Dali's name for the song in this first round. I must not lose. Otherwise, shame will be brought onto our nation and school. He suddenly changed his calligraphy style again. The pen didn't appear to be writing words. It now resembled a hatchet hacking into rocks. Guo Fu managed to see what was happening and asked her mother, "Uncle Zhu is carving words." Huang Rong smiled and said, "My daughter is not stupid. The finger technique he's now following is the Shigu script. This is the script writing that one uses in the spring and autumn period. It's the characters that can be seen when one uses a hatchet to carve words on a stone drum. See whether you can recognize the words that Uncle Zhu is writing." Guo Fu followed the pen, but saw that every word he wrote was windy and twisty, all looking like a small painting. She didn't know one word. Huang Rong smiled and said, "That's an ancient style of calligraphy used in Zhou Dynasty 7 to 256 BC. No wonder you wouldn't know any of them. Even I can't recognize all of them." Guo'er clapped and said, "Naturally, it'll be even harder for that Mongolian idiot to recognize them. Mother, take a look at him. His head is full of sweat, and his legs and arms are all over the place." Indeed, Huo could only recognize a word or two of this ancient style of calligraphy. Since he doesn't know what the opponent is writing, of course he will not be able to predict where the pen will attack. It was now difficult for him to respond. Zhu Ziliu kept on producing word after word of this ancient calligraphy. The characters were profound with an ancient air, and the power of the solitary yang finger, which the calligraphy style uses as a base, also increased. Huo's fan waved out, but he was a bit too slow to take it back. Zhu Ziliu's pen moved and scripted an ancient character on his fan. Huo took a look and asked uncertainly, "Is that net?" Zhu Ziliu laughed and said, "Wrong, that is you." He then wrote another character on his fan. Huo said, "Most probably that's moon, isn't it?" Zhu Ziliu shook his head and said, "Wrong, that's hence." Huo was discouraged. He shook his fan to shake off the pen tip and stop Zhu Ziliu from writing on his fan, but he didn't predict that Zhu Ziliu would suddenly send out a left palm to attack. Huo sent out a palm to block this, but this allowed Zhu Ziliu in, and he wrote another 2 characters on his fan, but because there wasn't much time, the characters were not written in the ancient calligraphy style but cursive calligraphy. Huo recognized these characters and called out, "Barbarian?" Zhu Ziliu laughed and said, "Correct, it is you are hence a barbarian." Everyone hated the Mongols for invading their country and killing their citizens. Hate and anger was in their hearts. When they heard Zhu Ziliu insulting Huo by saying, "You are hence a barbarian," they all cheered and shouted. Huo could not handle Zhu Ziliu's solitary yang book finger. With the cursive and ancient calligraphy, he was already afraid. When he heard the cheers and calls, he was even more disturbed. He saw Zhu Ziliu's pen shaking and waving, writing 3 ancient characters in a row in midair. How could he think about trying to recognize these characters? He could only force himself to fight on. He raised his fan to try to protect his vital points on his chest, when suddenly he felt his knee go numb. His pressure point had been sealed by the opponent's pen as it turned. Huo's knee felt numb and wanted to collapse, but he thought if he kneels, he would have no face. He took a deep breath and surged a current of Kai towards the pressure point in his knee. He wanted to leap away and admit defeat when Zhu Ziliu's pen came in like lightning, sealing his pressure point again. Zhu Ziliu used his pen to replace the finger, using the tip of the pen to make use of the solitary yang finger technique, continuously attacking. Could Huo defend against this? His knee became numb and he eventually knelt down onto the floor. His face was devoid of color. All the heroes cheered with thunderous noise. Gu Jing said to Huang Rong, "Your ingenious plan worked." Huang Rong gave a slight smile. The Wu brothers were watching from the side when they saw the boundless changes of their martial uncle Zhu's solitary yang finger. They were both in awe and were thinking, "Martial Uncle Zhu's internal energy is profound and strong, embedding itself into calligraphy. There are many ingenious and masterly aspects within it. I don't know when I will be able to reach such a stage." One called out, "Brother." The other called, "Little brother." The both of them were thinking of the same thing and were about to say something in praise of their martial uncle's martial arts. Suddenly Zhu Ziliu called out, "Ah!" They quickly turned their heads and saw that he had fallen. Everyone was shocked at this sudden change of events. After Huo had admitted defeat, Zhu Ziliu had come over to unseal his pressure point. The technique of sealing pressure points using the solitary yang finger is completely different than conventional pressure point sealing. It is extremely difficult for others to unseal it, so Zhu Ziliu went over to him and tapped his sides a few times, circulating his Kai to unseal his pressure point. He couldn't have known that as soon as Huo's pressure point was unsealed, there was an opportunity for Huo to take advantage of him. He gave a grunt, and before he stood up, he activated a booby trap in his fan. 4 poison nails flew out from the fan's spine, all of them hitting Zhu Ziliu in the body. When skilled fighters duel, when a win or loss is declared, they cannot act again. Never mind that everyone was watching, who could have guessed that he would suddenly launch an ambush. If Huo had launched his projectiles in the middle of the duel, even though the booby trap was ingenious, he would not have succeeded in harming his opponent. When Zhu Ziliu was unsealing his pressure point, he was only an inch away from him. The weapon was activated close to the body. Even if one's skills were higher, it would have been difficult to avoid this attack. The poison on the nails was produced from the snowy mountains of western Tibet and is very lethal. As soon as Zhu Ziliu was struck with the nails, his body broke out in unbearable pain. It was difficult for him to stand up properly. Everyone was shocked and angry. They were all pointing at Huo Du, insulting and cursing him, saying that he was a brazen scoundrel and despicable. Huo Du laughed and said, "The little prince has turned defeat into victory. What shame is there in that? Before we started, we did not forbid the use of projectiles. If that brother Zhu succeeded in using a projectile against me, I would have admitted defeat." Though not everyone agreed with what he said, they did not have a reply to his words, but the insults and curses kept on coming. Guo Jing dashed over and picked up Zhu Ziliu. He saw the 4 nails sticking out of his chest. His face looked strange. Guo Jing knew that the poison on the nails was extremely exotic. He quickly sealed 3 main pressure points to slow down the blood flow. The veins were completely sealed, stopping the poison from reaching his heart. He asked Huang Rong, "What should we do?" When Diankang Yuyan saw that his apprentice brother was poisoned, he was worried and angry. He tucked in his gown, wanting to dash forward and fight Huo Du. Huang Rong was still thinking about the plan, she thought. The opponent has already won a match. If Brother Fisherman goes, Derba will be the one who will be sent out to meet him, and we won't have a way to win. She quickly said, "Brother, please wait," Diankang Yuyan asked. "What for?" Though Huang Rong was wise and clever, she couldn't give a reply. They had already lost the first match, and there will be some difficulty in the last 2 matches. Huo Du used a trick to beat Zhu Ziliu, and he stood at the front of the hall pleased with himself. He took a look all around and felt that he was on top of the world. In the corner of his eye, he saw Xiao Longnu and Yang Guo sitting shoulder to shoulder on a stone base, holding each other hands, engaged in conversation. They completely ignored his victory as if nothing had happened. He couldn't stop himself from getting angry and pointed his fan at Yang Guo, shouting out, "Bastard, get up!" All of Yang Guo's attention was on Xiao Longnu. Though the world is a big place, there was nothing that would distract him. Because of this, the heated battle between Huo Du and Zhu Ziliu was nothing to him. He didn't see or hear it. In the years he lived with Xiao Longnu in the tomb, he didn't know that he had etched Xiao Longnu deep into his heart and soul, in life or death. That day when Xiao Longnu said she wanted to be his wife, it was such a sudden event. He had never thought about this before, and startled, he could not think of a reply. After Xiao Longnu had disappeared, he repeated in his heart hundreds of times, "I want her, I want her. Even if I die immediately, I want Gugu to be my wife." The love between he and Xiao Longnu bloomed unconsciously. After they departed, the love kept on flourishing without stop. Yang Guo wasn't afraid of anything. Xiao Longnu was blind to the world and its ways. They just knew that if they desired to love, they loved. If they desired happiness, then they'd get happiness. What had it to do with other people? One didn't care and the other didn't understand. In the midst of 1,000 people, in the middle of a heated battle, the 2 of them were holding hands, talking to each other, wrapped in love. When Huo Du cursed at him, Yang Guo was still oblivious of him. Huo Du wanted to curse him further when Jinlun Fawang ordered, "Our side has won the first round, and we can now proceed on to the second round." Huo Du glanced at Yang Guo with hate and then returned to his table and said clearly, "We have won the first round. My apprentice brother Derba will fight in the second round. Which hero from the other side will come out to meet him?" Derba took out a weapon from his Buddhist robe and went to the middle of the hall. When everyone saw his weapon, they were all shocked. It was a long, coarse golden rod. The golden demon subduing rod was around 4 feet long. The ends of the rod were thick and rough, and the body of the rod glittered with a golden light. It appeared that the weapon was made out of pure gold. It was a lot heavier than an identical rod made out of steel. He went to the middle of the hall and bowed to the heroes, and then threw his metal rod up in the air. The golden rod fell down, and with a crash sound, 2 of the large jade flower bowls on the floor were smashed. The rod buried itself 1 foot into the floor. This was meant as a warning. He was a shriveled and skinny monk, but he had the ability to use such a weapon, indicating the level of martial arts he had. Huang Rong thought, "Brother Jing can subdue this rude monk, but Fawang will fight in the 3rd round. Then our side will have no one to fight him. The match will be over. This is unspeakable. I'll go and force myself to fight using masterly kung fu to battle him." She raised the dog beating stick and said, "I'll go." Guo Jing was extremely shocked and quickly said, "You can't. You can't. Your body is not well. How can you fight?" Huang Rong felt that there was no other way to achieve victory. If they lost this round, then there will be no need for the third round. Just as she was hesitating, Diankang Yuyan called out, "Chief Huang, allow me to fight that evil monk." When he saw the condition that his apprentice brother was in after contracting the poison, his heart was burning and he wanted to take revenge. Huang Rong had no other good ideas, she thought. We can only struggle on. If he beats the monk, Brother Jing will fight Jinlun Fawang to settle this. So she said, "Please be careful, apprentice brother." The Wu brothers took the pair of metal oars that their martial uncle used to him. Diankang Yuyan held them under his arms and went to the middle of the hall. His eyes were red with fury as he circled Derba. Derba didn't know what it was about. When he saw him walking around him, he turned to him. Diankang Yuyan suddenly called out. His oars waved out as he hacked down towards his head. Derba's movements were extremely fast. He quickly picked up his golden subduing rod and raised it up in response. The rod and oars met. The clashing sound rang in everyone's ears. Both of them felt a slight pain and both knew their opponent's power was strong, and then they both leapt backwards. Derba said a sentence in Tibetan, while Diankang Yuyan insulted him in a Dali dialect. Though the two didn't understand the other, they suddenly came close to each other again. The oars and rod came out at the same time. Another clashing sound of gold and metal colliding was heard. This battle was completely different to the graceful and civil fight between Hu Du and Zhu Ziliu. The two of them fought like copper versus iron, brute force against brute force. The two of them fought with advanced external hard kung fu. The oars and rod created gusts of wind. The onlookers were shocked and astonished. Diankang Yuyan's natural strength was already high. When he was serving Reverend Yiding, he lived in secret in Xiangxi. He used his iron's oars to row upstream against the current every day. His arms became like steel. He is the first disciple of Reverend Yiding and was under his teaching for the longest time. Because he was simple and crass, Reverend Yiding had always treated him with care and love. His natural ability was lacking. His internal energy couldn't compare with Zhu Ziliu's. However, his external hard skills were extremely powerful. Right now, the two were competing with their external hard skills, his strong point. His oars flew up and down as he attacked. Each metal oar was about 50 kilos, 110 plus pounds. But he lifted them up as if they were light. He was as fluid as normal people with sabers or swords that weighed a few kilos. Derba has always thought she natural strength was unbeatable. He couldn't have guessed that he would meet a man with such divine strength in the Central Plains. Not only was the opponent's strength high, his stances were also profound. He needed all his efforts to use his golden rod. The rod attacked the oars attacked the rod, the two of them attacking more than defending. When Zhu Ziliu and Hu Du were fighting, the people who were watching were forced backwards because of the great gusts of the winds they generated. Now, three extremely heavy weapons were clashing. Along with resisting the wind generated by the weapons, the loud noises created by the clashing of the weapons was also extremely hard to endure. Most of them covered their ears as they watched. Under the candlelight, the golden rod glittered. The two steel oars were like two streaks of black. The weapons swirled and tangled with each other. The fight was becoming more and more spectacular. The crowd had never seen such a battle in their lives. Of course, there had been even more dangerous and perilous situations, but when skilled fighters compete with internal energy one with another, the effects are on the inside. From the outside, it looks very ordinary. When it came to the stances and the countering techniques of weapons and fists, it had ingenious and refined aspects, but it couldn't compare with the ferocious aspects of the stances. It is extremely rare to see someone with Diankang Yuyan's kind of divine strength, but it is even rarer to see two people with the same kind of divine strength engaged in such a heated battle as this one. Gu Jing and Huang Rong watched with sweating palms. Gu Jing said, "Ronger, do you think our side will win?" Huang Rong said, "I can't make it out right now." In reality, how would Gu Jing not know what was happening in the battle, but he hoped that his wife would say Yuyan can win so his heart could be comforted. Tens of moves passed, but their energy didn't decrease. Instead, it became even more vigorous. Diankang Yuyan called out as he attacked with his oars to increase his clout. Derba asked, "What did you say?" He spoke in Tibetan. How would Diankang Yuyan understand? He too called out, "What did you say?" Derba didn't understand either. The two of them assumed that they were insulting each other. They fought fiercely. The chairs and tables in the hall flew up. The crowd was worried that the one of them would lose concentration and hit one of the pillars in the hall, causing the hall to collapse. Jinlun Fawang and Hu Duo were both secretly alarmed. If this battle continued on for much longer, even if Derba gains victory, he will be severely injured. But how could the fight stop with the two battling so heatedly? The two of them leapt and jumped around, calling out as they fought violently. The yellow glow and dark trail forced the candlelight to darken. Suddenly, a ferocious heaven-shattering noise was heard. The two of them called out and leapt away at the same time. When the oar in Yuyan's right hand collided with the golden rod, the two of them were using all their strength. The handle of the oar was narrow and not as firm as the golden rod, hence, the oar snapped in half. The blade part flew away, and a dang sound was heard as it dropped in front of Xiao Longnu. Xiao Longnu was completely absorbed in conversation with Yang Guo. She was unaware, and the oar blade part struck her on the toes of the left foot. She gave out a cry of "Aiya" and leapt up. When she called out in pain, Yang Guo was alarmed and quickly asked, "Are you hurt?" Xiao Longnu rubbed her toes, the wincing at the pain that could be seen on her face. Yang Guo was furious. He turned around to look for the person who used the metal slab to hurt his gu-gu. He saw Diankang Yuyan holding the handle of the broken oar in his right hand and was disagreeing with Derba. He wanted to use his single oar to fight him. Derba shook his head. He knew that the enemy's strength and stamina compared to his was 6 of 1.5 a dozen to the other. If they continued, it would be difficult to get a result, since now he has the advantage in weaponry. The winner of this round is himself. Hu Du stood up tall and said clearly, "We have won 2 rounds out of the 3. The position of the Chancellor belongs to my master, everyone." Before he finished, Yang Guo said to Yuyan, "How did your steel oar break? How did it fly over and hit my gu-gu?" Yuyan said, Yang Guo said, "Your steel oar is poorly made. Quickly go and apologize to my gu-gu." Diankang Yuyan saw that he was a little boy and didn't pay him any attention. Yang Guo suddenly stretched out his arm and snatched the broken handle out of his hand and called out, "Quickly go and say sorry to my gu-gu." Hu Du was interrupted by him and was furious. He shouted, "Little bastard! Get out of the way!" Yang Guo called out, "Little bastard is insulting who?" When Hu Du heard him say, "Little bastard is insulting who," he replied without much thought, "Little bastard is insulting you." How would he know that boys from the south had always talked in this manner to argue? He wasn't concentrating and fell into the trap. Yang Guo laughed out loud and said, "Correct, it is a little bastard who's insulting me." Everyone in the main hall was very worried and anxious, but after hearing this young man's sudden comment, everyone broke out in laughter. Hu Du was furious. He took out his folded fan and attacked Yang Guo's head. Guo Jing darted out and was about to snatch the fan away when Yang Guo ducked down and darted underneath Hu Du's arm. The handle of the oar swirled round. Yang Guo used the dog-beating stick techniques, coil formulae, and tripped up Hu Du's legs. Hu Du could not stand up properly. He stumbled and almost fell onto the floor. Hu Du was highly skilled. He changed the stumbling force into a leaping force. He leapt into the air and came down steady. Guo Jing was startled. He asked, "Guo'er, what's the matter?" Yang Guo laughed and said, "Nothing. He doesn't respect Hong Qigong's dog-beating stick technique. I wanted to use the dog-beating stick technique to trip him up. It's a pity that he managed to jump away." Guo Jing was surprised and asked, "How do you know this technique?" Yang Guo lied and said, "Just now when Chief Lu fought him. I learned a few stances after watching him." Guo Jing knew that he wasn't the sharpest tool in the box. He knew that there are a lot of people who were cleverer than him, and he believed what Yang Guo said without any doubts. Hu Du assumed that it was his fault for being careless, and this allowed Yang Guo to make him stumble. How would he know that a teenager like Yang Guo would possess such great martial arts? The most serious matter now is fighting for the position of the Chancellor of Wulin. It won't be too late if he first completes the serious task and then punishes the punk. So he took a large step towards Guo Jing and said, "Hero Guo, it is we who are the victors in today's duel. My master Jinlun Fawang is the Chancellor of Wulin. If there is anyone who doesn't agree with this." Before he finished, Yang Guo sneaked up behind him. He sent the oar handle forward and used the dog-beating stick techniques, fourth stance of the poke formulae, suddenly poking Hu Du's backside. With Hu Du's abilities, how would he not know when someone was sneaking up behind to ambush him? However, the dog-beating stick technique is extremely ingenious and masterly. Though he realized what was happening, his sudden dodge was not perfect and there was still a chance to hit him. A poo sound was heard as he was hit in the backside. Even though his internal energy was profound, the buttocks are an area of the body with a lot of flesh. The attack was very painful and was coupled with the shock of getting hit. He thought that he would definitely avoid this attack, but the attack managed to get him, and he couldn't stop himself from giving out a "ah" call. Yang Guo shouted, "What was that? I don't agree to this." In a flash, the hall was filled with laughter. The heroes all thought not only is this teenager naughty, he was extremely bold. The Mongolian prince was twice undone by him. Now that it has reached this point, how could Huo do not be angry? He turned his hand and wanted to smack him across the face to vent his anger before doing anything else. This was a casual palm, but the force behind the palm is derived from the main theories from the school of Tibet. This palm was meant to knock the young man unconscious. Guo Jing knew that this palm was powerful. He stretched out his left arm and hooked it up, grabbing Huo Du's palm. Guo Jing said, "How can you mess around with a little kid?" When Huo Du's arm was grabbed, he felt half his body going numb. He couldn't stop his shock and anger from rising. Yang Guo took the opportunity and swept the oar handle across, striking him heavily across the backside. He called out, "Disobedient bastard, father's going to spank you." Guo Jing shouted, "Guo'er, get back, don't make trouble." But the crowd all laughed. The Mongolian warriors on the other side were all calling out, 2 versus 1. "You don't want face. Does that count as dueling?" Guo Jing was startled and released Huo Du's hand. Guo Jing returned to this wife's side, but he was worried that Yang Guo would suffer. His eyes did not leave the 2 people in the middle of the hall. He saw Huo Du sending out palms and kicks, attacking Yang Guo. Yang Guo was dodging and calling out at the same time, "I'm going to spank you, spank you." The oar handle kept on attacking Huo Du's backside, but Huo Du's movements were quick. Each hit met thin air. Huo Du wanted to use his folded fan to hit Yang Guo on his head, but Yang Guo kept on using the oar handle to hit his backside. The 2 were chasing and rushing around. The 2 of them circled the hall very rapidly, but neither of them could hit each other. At first, the onlookers just felt something weird was going on, but when they saw the 2 of them circling around the hall, they were extremely shocked. Though Yang Guo was of a young age, his footsteps were light and his movements were swift and nimble. There was no difference between him and Huo Du. Huo Du attacked him a few times, but each time, Yang Guo managed to escape cleverly. Diankang Yuyan and Darbo were originally arguing about their weapons and staring angrily at each other. One would want to dash forward and fight again. The other was completely prepared in case the opponent suddenly attacked. When they saw that Huo Du couldn't handle such a young man, they both were extremely surprised. One of them opened his mouth and laughed loudly. The other shouted out insults in Tibetan. In the blink of an eye, Huo Du and Yang Guo had circled around the hall 3 times. Huo Du could see that his opponent's lightness kung fu was terrific. If he continued to follow and chase him like this, he might lose. He suddenly turned around. His left palm came out in front of him to grab the oar handle. The fan in his right hand came out to seal the looping jump pressure point of the side of his leg. However, Yang Guo did not want to meet him face-on. He swerved his body around the fan and kept on hitting out with the oar handle, calling out, "Father wants to spank you. A day doesn't go past without 3 spanks. I have spanked you twice. There's 1 more." To use such a method to ridicule your opponent in battle without danger, your kung fu must be a lot better than the opponent's in all areas. Although Yang Guo had learned many advanced martial arts, his kung fu still could not compare with Huo Du's. Acting like this would definitely result in trouble. However, the crowd was watching with passion. They all cheered, called out, and they applauded to urge him on. When Huo Du heard this, his mind was disturbed. If his backside is struck once more by this child in front of these people, even if he killed this boy, he still will have lost a lot of face. Because of this, he concentrated on dodging and evading and forgot about attacking. Yang Guo was able to avoid danger for now. By now, Huang Rong could tell that an eminent master had instructed Yang Guo. His kung fu really was terrific. She also remembered the day when he passed on his internal energy to her to help her recuperate. The internal energy he had developed was not ordinary. She thought that by allowing him to stir up trouble for a while, attention had actually been drawn away from the 2 defeats, so she called out, "Guo'er, go and fight him. I don't think he's your match." Yang Guo stuck his tongue out at Huo Du and said, "Do you dare?" He stood still and pointed to his nose. Although Huo Du was furious, he couldn't allow a little thing like this get in the way of the mission. Their side had now won 2 rounds. They have taken the position of Chancellor of Wulin. Why should he get involved with a little kid? He said, "Little bastard, I'll take my time in teaching you a lesson." Right now, the Chancellor of Wulin Jinlun Fawang will say a few words. Everyone listen to his orders. All the heroes made a hue and cry, disagreeing, clamoring, and shouting. Hugh Du said loudly, "We agreed beforehand, 2 wins out of 3. Doesn't your word count?" All these heroes are famous people of the Jianghu world. They all knew what his words meant. He wanted them to go back on their words. This would never happen. But they had lost the last 2 rounds in an unjust way. The first round they lost due to an ambush. In the second, only the weapon was broken. They haven't really lost that round yet, and it was difficult for them to accept that justice was done. When Huo Du asked them this question, they didn't have a reply. Yang Guo said, "Look at that old monk. Look how tall and skinny he is. He looks weird. How can he be the Chancellor of Wulin? I don't think he's worthy." Huo Du angrily said, "Who's the master of this child? Take a control of him. If he continues to cause trouble, I won't hold back." Yang Guo said, "My master is worthy to take the position of the Chancellor of Wulin. What skill does your master have?" Huo Du said, "Who is your master? Please invite them out." He saw Yang Guo's martial arts weren't ordinary. He assumed that his master must be a skilled fighter, so he used the word please in his sentence. Yang Guo said, "Today, the disciples are representing their masters to fight for the position of Chancellor of Wulin, isn't that it?" Huo Du said, "Correct. Our side has won 2 of the 3 rounds. Because of this, my master is the Chancellor of Wulin." Yang Guo said, "Fine, even if you beat them all, so what? You won't be able to beat my master's disciple." Huo Du asked, "Who is you master's disciple?" Yang Guo laughed and said, "Donkey, my master's disciple is of course me." The crowd listened to his words with amusement and broke out in laughter. Yang Guo said, "We'll compete for another 3 rounds. If you can win 2 rounds out of the 3, I'll recognize that monk as the Chancellor of Wulin. If I win 2 rounds, then sorry, the position of the Chancellor of Wulin goes to my master." When the crowd heard him say this, they all thought, could it be that this boy's master is some eminent master and has come here to challenge the position of Chancellor of Wulin with Hong Qigong and Jinlun Fawang? They didn't care who the master of this boy was. At least they are Han. The young man cannot beat Huo Du. However, victory to the Mongols will allow them to take the position of Chancellor. Our side has already been defeated. A new complication might bring about a reversal of fortune, so they all said, "Correct, I agree, only if you Mongols gain another 2 victories." That young brother is correct. The Central Plains have many great fighters. You were lucky in gaining those 2 rounds. Who cares about that? Huo Du pondered. The opponent's 2 strongest fighters have already lost. What's there to be afraid of in fighting 2 more rounds? I'm only afraid that after 2 comes another 2. He said to Yang Guo, "Your master has a right to challenge for the position of the Chancellor of Wulin. However, there are thousands and thousands of heroes in this world. After 1 round comes another. When will it stop?" Yang Guo raised his head and said, "My master doesn't care about who takes the place of the Chancellor of Wulin, but when she saw your master, her anger flared up." Huo Du said, "Who is your master? Where is Senior?" Yang Guo laughed and said, "Senior is in front of your eyes. Hey, Gugu, he asks how Senior is." Xiao Longnu gave an N sound and nodded to Huo Du. Everyone was startled at first, but then burst out in laughter. They saw that Xiao Longnu was beautiful. She was younger than Yang Guo. How could she be his master? The young man must be joking, trying to make a fool out of Huo Du. Only Hao Da-tung, Sun Bu'er, Zhao Zhaijing, and Zhen Zhaibing knew that he was telling the truth. Though Huang Rong was intelligent and wise, she could not believe such a pretty, delicate young girl could be his master. Huo Du was furious. He shouted, "Little bastard is talking crap. There are many important matters to be resolved today at this heroes' gathering. How can I allow you to make trouble here? Crawl away." Yang Guo said, "Your master is ugly and dark. His words are gibberish. It is extremely hard on the ears. Look at how beautiful my master is, graceful and elegant. If she is the Chancellor of Wulin, won't that be a lot better than your ugly monk master?" When Xiao Longnu heard Yang Guo praising her beauty, she was delighted. She revealed a smile. It really was like a flower blooming, a halo of beautiful jade, unparalleled elegance. The crowd saw that Yang Guo was becoming more and more daring in his attempt to make a fool of his opponent. They felt great delight. A few experienced people were secretly worried that Huo Du would take his life. Indeed, Huo Du could no longer take it and called out, "All the world's heroes, please can I have your attention? When the young prince kills this little punk, he will only have himself to blame. It is not my fault." His folded fan moved. He was about to attack Yang Guo's head. Yang Guo impersonated his voice and stuck out his chest. He called out, All the world's heroes, please can I have your attention? When the little punk kills this prince, he will only have himself to blame. It is not the fault of the little punk." In the midst of the laughter, he suddenly swept the oar handle towards Hugh Du's backside. Hugh Du moved out of the way and sent his fan out along with a lightning left palm, straight towards his head. The fan was a decoy, the palm was not. All his strength was behind that palm. His intention was to split open Yang Guo's head in one stroke. Yang Guo slanted his body and moved away. Along the way, he pushed out a table towards him. A G sound was heard as Hugh Du's palm landed on the table. Splinters flew everywhere as the table was split in half. The onlookers gulped as they saw Hugh Du's frightening strength. Hugh Du kicked the table out of the way and immediately afterward followed it up with another attack. Yang Guo saw that his palm was ruthless and didn't dare to take it easy anymore. He used the dog-beating stick technique with the oar handle to fight him. Hong Qigong personally taught him the stances of the dog-beating stick technique that day on the peak of Mount Hua. He had performed the technique's most ingenious and masterly aspects for Yang Feng. He had now also heard the formulae and changes of the technique from Huang Rong when she was teaching Lu Yaojiao. When the two aspects were combined, he was able to use the technique properly. But the oar handle was too heavy and too short. It wasn't very convenient. After another 10 moves, the oar handle was trapped to one side by Hugh Du's fan. Huang Rong saw that he really was using the dog-beating stick technique, though the stances weren't smooth and not fully utilized. When he used it, the techniques he used looked proper and like the real thing. She knew that his weapon wasn't convenient for him, so she went into the middle of the hall and stuck the stick in between the two and said, "Guo'er, to beat dogs you need the dog-beating stick. You can borrow Chief Lu's dog-beating stick. After you've finished beating the evil dog, return the stick." The dog-beating stick is the property of the beggar clan's chief. It had to be clear that it was being borrowed. Yang Guo was delighted and received the stick. Huang Rong whispered into his ear, "Force him to give up the antidote." As soon as she said this, she returned to her place. Yang Guo had not paid any attention to Zhu Ziliu falling victim to a concealed weapon. He didn't know what antidote she was talking about and was slightly startled. Hugh Du's palm chopped down. Yang Guo raised the dog-beating stick and pointed towards Hugh Du's belly. The bamboo stick was strong and sturdy. The length and weight was perfect. Using the dog-beating stick to perform the dog-beating stick technique can only result in an increase of power. Hugh Du had sent out a palm that was chopping across his neck when he saw the bamboo stick come out. It was aiming for the sealed first pressure point 3 inches below his navel. This was an important pressure point to the movement of the veins. This little punk's ability in recognizing pressure points was so precise that Hugh Du couldn't help being shocked. As he had tangled with Yang Guo, he thought that Yang Guo was just a nimble young man who had been advised by a great master. After he saw this stance of piercing towards his pressure point, he began to treat him as an opponent who could match him. He didn't dare to take it easy. He returned his palm and used his fan to protect his chest. The onlookers saw that he had changed his stance into defense, showing that he was worried about Yang Guo. They were even more surprised. Yang Guo said, "Wait, this little punk does not fight for no reason. There has to be a wager." Hugh Du said, "Fine if you lose. Kowtow to me 3 times and call me grandfather 3 times. Yang Guo again used a trick that children from Jiangnan used to take advantage of others. He pretended he didn't hear and asked, "Call what?" Using this trick makes it very easy for the other person to fall into the trap. Hugh Du had grown up in Mongolia and Tibet and had always been surrounded by honest people. How would he understand the craftiness of Jiangnan kids? So he casually replied, "Call grandfather." Yang Guo responded, "N, good grandson. Say it one more time." The crowd broke out into laughter again, and Hugh Du knew that he had again fallen for a trick. He clenched his teeth. With the fan in his right hand and his left palm, he attacked like a violent storm. Yang Guo used all his strength to repel him and said, "If you lose, you need to give the antidote to me." Hugh Du angrily said, "I'll lose to you. Stop daydreaming, bastard." Yang Guo raised the bamboo stick and shouted, "Little bastard is scolding who?" Hugh Du said, "Little bastard is scolding." As he got up to this part, he suddenly became aware. At least he managed to rein back the horse from the cliff. The last word, "you," was held back. Yang Guo laughed and said, "Little prince, I've taught you a few things, remember it." Though his words were said easily, it was becoming more and more difficult for his hands to cope. Hugh Du is Jinlun Faowang's proudest disciple. He had received the important aspects of the Tibetan school, and he was able to exchange almost 1,000 stances with Reverend Yideng's strongest disciple. His internal energy was profound. He and Yang Guo should not be mentioned in the same breath. At first, Yang Guo was able to get an advantage by making him angry. Huo Du had not fought with his full strength. Now he really was fighting. After 20 moves or so, the comparison between he and Yang Guo was clear. Yang Guo was definitely inferior. The crowd saw that he was of a young age, yet he managed to last so long against Huo Du. They all praised him and said, "This child is amazing." They all asked each other whose tutelage is this young man under. Huo Du saw that his opponent was weaker than him and sent out stronger and stronger palms. The dog-beating stick technique that Yang Guo was using is ingenious and inspired. Huo Du's fan and palm techniques could not match it. But all Hung Qigong taught him was the stances. He had heard the formulae and principles from Huang Rong. He was clever and managed to force himself to combine the two and use it. But it was impossible for him to understand and comprehend everything immediately, so of course the power of the technique cannot be fully utilized. After a while, Yang Guo was dodging and flashing around, but it was difficult for him to attack. Ever since the first fight started, Guo Fu and the Wu brothers had been watching intently, quietly talking to each other. When Yang Guo came out and started to fight, they were shocked and surprised. The Wu brothers said that he was rash and impudent. "He's just asking for trouble." Guo Fu was on the opposite side. She praised Yang Guo, saying that he was daring and ardent. When the Wu brothers heard this, their hearts ached with an uncomfortable feeling. When the two brothers first saw the closeness between Xiao Longnu and Yang Guo when she first arrived, the two of them glanced at each other and were able to relax. When they heard Yang Guo say that she was his master, though they didn't know whether this was true or not, their hearts sank. Now they saw that Yang Guo was forced onto his back foot, as sign that he is losing by Huo Du. The two brothers knew that they shouldn't wish that the enemy would win, but deep in their hearts, they hoped that the more he suffers, the better. Because of the trouble in their hearts, the two experienced many different emotions in the blink of eye. Guo Fu didn't have any good feelings towards Yang Guo, but she didn't loathe him either. She just treated him as a down on his luck, incapable person. He was insignificant, but when she heard her father wanted to betroth her to him, she was angry. But she still thought that this would never happen, so she didn't take it to mind. Later on, she saw that his martial arts were anything but ordinary. She was just surprised and nothing more. Yet when she saw that he was in danger, she couldn't stop herself from worrying about him. Yang Guo knew that if this continued, within 10 moves he would succumb to his opponent. He had glanced over and saw that although Xiao Longnu was still sitting on the stone base, her back was no longer leaning against the pillar. She was paying close attention. At any moment she would leap out and help him. He had an idea. He suddenly waved the stick and flew across, leaping over Xiao Longnu's legs. Huo Du shouted, "Where are you going?" He followed after him. Xiao Longnu's legs raised slightly, the tip of her left foot aimed towards Huo Du's descendant's arrangement pressure point on his right ankle. The tip of her right foot kicked towards his left foot's surging spring pressure point. At least Huo Du's skills were profound and refined. He saw what was happening. There was a nimble change. Xiao Longnu's legs had risen a little, and the bystanders didn't think anything of it. He himself knew that Xiao Longnu had used a lethal attack. In the midst of this, he used a stance of the Mandarin duck's looping kick. His legs kicked thin air in a loop and avoided the motionless pressure point kick by Xiao Longnu. When Yang Guo went by Xiao Longnu's legs, he knew what was going to happen. He didn't wait for his opponent to fall to the ground and attacked with his dog-beating stick. Huo Du stretched out his fan and supported it against the stick, and used the force to move far away from Xiao Longnu. He couldn't stop himself from glancing over at her, thinking, "Indeed, there are many able people in the Central Plains. That boy and girl are still in their teens. How come they are so good?" With the advantage of an extra stance, Yang Guo kept on attacking with the stick technique. He used 3 critical stances in a row, and Huo Du was scrambling about, using all his strength to repel the attack. However, Yang Guo did not have an ingenious 4th attack to continue the chain. He slowed down momentarily and allowed Huo Du to counterattack, and was on the receiving end again. The onlookers did not understand the stick technique, and it went by them. Huang Rong, however, kept on calling out, "What a pity," in secret. She couldn't hold in her thoughts and said, "The stick returns across the ground under the clever hand, striking the twin dogs without return." This was one of the formulae of the dog-beating stick technique. Though Yang Guo knew the stances and formulae, he didn't know when to use them. When he heard Huang Rong recite this, he immediately brushed the stick across the ground and attacked forward without returning. The direction and force of this stick was weird. Though he used it, he didn't know what use it had. How could it be that as soon as the stick attacked forward, it happened just at the same time as the opponent raised his fan? Du had not finished using this stance but knew something was wrong. He hurriedly jumped up and moved away. Huang Rong continued, "When the dog leaps over the wall, how can it be beaten? Quickly hit its backside and chop its tail." This stick technique had been passed from generation to generation in the beggar clan. Beggars aren't the most elegant and cultured. The words, of course, would be vulgar. The bystanders thought that Huang Rong was ridiculing him by calling him a dog. They didn't know that she was giving martial arts advice to Yang Guo, though the dog-beating stick technique wasn't taught to anyone other than the chief. But firstly, Yang Guo had already learned it, and secondly, this match was extremely important. Victory was needed. Huang Rong couldn't care about the clan's rules anymore. When she saw the two of them advancing and retreating, attacking and defending, she kept on calling out pieces of advice. Every phrase she called out was ingenious and what was needed, and along with Yang Guo's intelligence, he was able to unleash the stance's power. After he gained the upper hand many times, he didn't wait for Huang Rong to finish the line before he continued. He just needed the first few words and was immediately able to use right technique. The power of the dog-beating stick technique was indeed strong, even with Du's level of martial arts. A bamboo stick was able to run circles around him, and he had no chance to attack. Everyone saw that after a few more moves, the skilled prince of the other nation would lose. The hero's surprise and delight rose. The hall was filled with cheers. Du quickly unleashed two stances with his fan, forcing Yang Guo away a few steps, and then called out, "Hold it!" Yang Guo laughed and said, "What? My grandson admits defeat." Du's face was angry and said firmly, "You said you are challenging for the position of chancellor for your master. Why are you using the martial arts of Hong Qigong? If you say you are representing Hong Qigong, we've just had 2 rounds. Are you people trying to cause confusion, deny it or not?" Huang Rong didn't think wrongly. These words were difficult to refute. She was about to argue with him when Yang Guo interrupted. "This time you are speaking like a person. Indeed, this stick technique is not my master's. Even if I beat you, you won't take it. If you want to test out my skills, it's not hard. Just know I used another sect's kung fu because I was afraid that when I unleash my own sect's kung fu, you'd lose even more tragically." When he heard Du's words, he looked over towards Xiao Longnu and realized something. Luckily, that prince woke me up. If I use the dog-beating stick technique to beat him, how will I be able to show off Gugu's abilities? How could Gugu not be offended if I've forgotten her great kindness in teaching me martial arts? In reality, Xiao Longnu was really innocent and her heart was filled with love and passion for Yang Guo. As long as she could see him, she was fulfilled. She didn't care about anything else. If he wins, that's great. If he loses, there's no harm. It doesn't matter. And when it comes to whether he uses their sect's kung fu or not, or whether he'd listen to Huang Rong's advice, she didn't take any of that to heart. Du thought, if you don't use the dog-beating stick technique, how hard will it be to take your life? So he chuckled and said, "Fine, I'll experience your master's great stances." The most refined techniques that Yang Guo had learned under Xiao Longnu were swordplay, so he faced the crowd and said, "Please, can I borrow one of you seniors' sword?" Within the 2,000 or so people in the hall, 300 of them carried a sword. When they heard Yang Guo's request, they all agreed and offered their swords. Before Hao Datung and Sun Guo'er entered the tutelage of Wang Qingyang, they were patriotic people. After they were nurtured by Wang Qingyang, their desire to repel the barbarian invaders was even stronger. They were of course angry with Yang Guo, who expelled himself from the Quanjin sect. But now when they saw that he was helping China to fend off the enemy, they flung their sect's feud with him to one side. Sun Guo'er was the weakest of the Quanjin 7 masters. Before Wang Qingyang died, he gave her Quanjin's sharpest and most precious sword to help compensate for her weak kung fu. She saw that Yang Guo was requesting a sword to fight off the enemy, so she dashed forward to the front, her hands holding a glittering, precious sword, and said, "Use this sword." Yang Guo saw that the sword was like a clear autumn river. He knew that it was a weapon which could cut through gold and jade. If he used it to fight Du, he would definitely be able to gain some advantage. But as soon as he saw the Taoist gown that Sun Guo'er was wearing, he immediately thought about the suffering that he had in Quanjin, and also remembered how Grandma Sun died under the palm of Hao Datung. He rolled his eyes and didn't take the sword. He instead turned around and borrowed a dark and rusted iron sword from a beggar clan member and said, "I'll borrow this brother's sword." He left Sun Guo'er standing there like a corpse. She couldn't advance forward or go back. Though she practiced Taoism, it is hard to cleanse the fiery nature of martial artist. This young man dared to throw back her good intentions of lending her sword. She couldn't stop herself from getting angry. She wanted to scold and curse him, but the enemy was here. It wasn't convenient to start another argument. She forced herself to endure her anger and return to the crowd. Yang Guo's character was too determined and stubborn. He loved and hated in the extreme. Originally, he would have taken this opportunity to repair some of the damage between him and Quanjin, but his reaction deepened the hatred between the two sides. When Huo Du saw that Yang Guo didn't take the precious sword but chose a rusty iron sword instead, he was worried. When one reaches an extremely high level in martial arts, flowers and leaves can be used to harm people, not needing the sharpness of weaponry. He pondered about the opponent taking such a blunt sword. Was he really that strong? He opened his fan and fluttered it twice. He was about to open his mouth to signal the start of the battle. Yang Guo's sword pointed to the 4 words written by Zhu Ziliu on his fan. He laughed and said, "You are hence a barbarian. Everyone knows that. There's no need to spread it everywhere." Huo Du's face went red. A pie sound was heard as the fan close and became a short stick. He pointed the fan towards Yang Guo's shoulder well pressure point. His left palm came chopping out with the force of a strong wind, ruthless and swift. Yang Guo's iron sword moved as he used the Jade Maiden Sword technique. In response, year ago when Lin Keing studied bitterly in the stone tomb, she didn't leave the tomb again after she developed the Jade Heart Manual, Kung Fu. She passed this skill onto her maid, who imparted it to Xiao Longnu, who in turn passed it onto Yang Guo. Not only did the maid not take a step into the world of Wulin, she never took a step off Mount Jiangnan. Though Li Machu is Xiao Longnu's senior apprentice sister, she was not taught the advanced and profound sword techniques of her master. She gained fame throughout the Jianghu world through the use of her projectiles, fly whisk, and palm techniques. Right now, he used the ancient tomb sect's sword techniques. Many skilled fighters from various schools and sects were amassed in the hall today, but apart from Xiao Longnu, no one knew this sword technique. The martial arts of the ancient tomb sect was developed by a woman. The next 2 generations were also women. It was unavoidable that the martial arts developed too much lightness and softness, and there wasn't enough power and fierceness. When Xiao Longnu taught him these stances, the stances carried 30% of this gracefulness and elegance. After he understood it completely, automatically he removed the femininity from the stances and turned its nature into a swift, at ease and airy style. The ancient tomb's lightness kung fu is unparalleled. Yang Guo was now moving around the main hall. Before a stance was finished, a second stance arrived. When the sword stances were first unleashed, the body was on the left. When the stances were repelling the enemy, the body had turned to the right. It was as if the sword and user were completely separated. The 2 of them had nothing to do with each other. He only used around 10 stances of this sword technique. Everyone was startled and watched in admiration. Huo Du's fan techniques were also a great skill. It had swipes, strikes, thrusts, and pierces, and this too relied on swiftness, lightness, and softness to overcome the enemy. But now it had met up with the ancient tomb's matchless lightness kung fu, and he was unable to unleash his moves. Plus, he was ridiculed by Yang Guo because of the 4 words written by Zhu Ziliu. He didn't want to open his fan again, and so the swiping aspect of his fan technique could not be used. When Guo Fu and the Wu brothers saw how excellent Yang Guo's sword techniques were, their 6 eyes were opened widely, and they didn't have anything more to say. The happiest person in the crowd was Guo Jing. He saw that the son of Yang Kang had learned such a good level of martial arts. Even he couldn't see what the origins of these techniques were. When he remembered the deep ties between the Guo and Yang families, he couldn't stop sadness and joy from stirring in his heart. Huang Rong glanced over at her husband. She saw that his eyes were red. A smile was on his lips. She knew what he was thinking and stretched out her hand and took his right hand. When Huo Du saw that he couldn't handle his enemy, he began to get impatient. He thought that if he loses to this young punk today, his name will be in ruins. How could he make his name in the Central Plains? He saw Yang Guo's sword pointed at an angle. The sword tip dispersed, and he attacked 3 places in quick succession. If he only was able to dodge them, he would be on his way to losing, so he opened his fan and blocked these 3 attacks. He called out again and used the ferocious wind rapid thunder skill again to counterattack. With his status as a skilled fighter of Wulin, he should not use all his abilities and effort in fighting a young man. He'll lose all face if he wins in such a manner. But all he cared about right now was winning. How could he care about such things? He kept on calling out, a ruthless stance followed by an even more ruthless stance. Yang Guo's sword was light and lively. The stances kept on coming without stopping, and it really was graceful, elegant, and leisurely. This set of beautiful maiden sword overcomes the opponent through grace and subtlety, and in contrast with the opponent's calls and shouts, Yang Guo's gracefulness and exquisiteness was even more emphasized. Though Yang Guo was wearing a torn and ragged garment, the sword technique's elegance and grace became clear in the eyes of the crowd. They felt that he was handsome and striking, and must be a fine son of a well-to-do family. However, as Yang Guo prioritized in achieving the elegance and gracefulness of the stances, the power of the sword technique became difficult to unleash. Hu Du fought without care for his life. He fought more and more fiercely. Yang Guo's strength gradually started to drain away. Gu Jing and Huang Rong saw that he was on his way to losing, and their eyebrows creased. They then saw the gusts of wind created by Hu Du's sleeve and fan becoming stronger and stronger. They couldn't stop themselves from calling out in their hearts, "Oh no!" Suddenly Yang Guo held his sword up and called out, "Careful, I'm going to use a projectile." Hu Du had used his fan's poison nails to injure Zhu Ziliu. When he heard Yang Guo say this, he knew that the iron sword was like his fan. There is a secret weapon hidden within. No wonder he didn't pick the sharp sword and instead chose the rusty one. Since he used such a method to gain victory, the opponent could do so too. When he saw Yang Guo's sword pointing to his front, he quickly leapt away. But all he saw was Yang Guo's left hand leading the sword, thrusting forward. What projectile? Hu Du knew he had fallen into Yang Guo's trap and cursed at him. "Little bastard," Yang Guo asked. "Little bastard curses who?" Hu Du didn't reply and pressed forward with his palm. Yang Guo's left hand rose up and he called out, "The projectile is coming." Hu Du quickly dodged to the right. The opponent's sword was coming in exactly from the right. Hu Du quickly pulled back and turned his waist. The sword tip brushed past his ribs from the right. This sword was extremely vicious when it missed. The crowd all called out, "What a pity!" The Mongolian warriors secretly thought, "Shameful." Though Hu Du managed to escape from death, his back had broken out in a cold sweat due to fright. He saw Yang Guo's left hand rise up again and call out, "Projectile." He didn't take notice of him anymore and advanced forwards with his palms. Indeed, the opponent was using a trick again. Yang Guo's sword pierced thin air as he attacked forwards. His left hand rose up a fourth time and loudly called out, "Projectile." Hu Du scolded, "Little." Before the second word was said, a flash of gold suddenly appeared in his eyes. He was now close to his opponent, and after all the false calls by his opponent, he was completely off guard. He quickly leapt up but felt his leg pricked by a very small and fine projectile. Although a projectile hit him, he thought it was small and wouldn't do much. Furiously, his fan slashed forward and his palm chopped out. He wanted to kill that crafty kid right there and then. Yang Guo had now achieved his aim. Why should he continue to fight so hard? He just used his sword to defend. He laughed as he said, "I warned you on many occasions about launching a projectile, and you didn't believe me. I didn't lie, did I?" Hu Du was about to attack with his palm when he suddenly felt his leg go numb and itchy as if a large mosquito had bitten him. He tried to endure it and finish attacking, but the numbness and itchiness became stronger and stronger. He was alarmed. Damn, that little bastard's projectile has poison on it. After this quick thought, the numbness and itchiness became unbearable. He didn't care about the situation he was in and stretched out his arm to scratch it. But after only one scratch, he felt his heart starting to feel itchy and irritated. He couldn't stop himself from calling out and falling down onto the floor. The potency of the poison on the ancient tomb's jade bee needles was rarely seen in the world. Just one little needle would cause unbearable pain. Never mind the fact that in the middle of battle, his blood was flowing around quickly, and he was struck by several needles. Derba took a large step forward and picked up his apprentice brother and placed him in his master's arms. He turned around to Yang Guo and said, "Little kid, I've come to fight you." The golden rod swept forwards, aiming towards Yang Guo's waist. A golden light was carried forward with this sweeping rod. The golden rod was extremely heavy. As soon he used it, the golden light could be seen. His natural strength was great. His movements were quick. Yang Guo's legs didn't move. He bent his waist in a few inches, and the golden rod brushed past him. Who could have known that Darba wouldn't wait for the golden rod to finish the sweep? His wrist used some force, and the sweeping force of the golden rod turned into a thrusting one, moving towards Yang Guo's waist. With such a heavy weapon and such heavy and fierce stances, the ability to suddenly change direction midway was completely unexpected by everyone. Yang Guo, too, was shocked. He quickly pushed his sword against the rod and used its force to fly away. Darba didn't wait for him to land. He followed up with another attack. Yang Guo's sword landed on the rod again, and he flew away for a second time. Darba called out, "Where can you run?" The golden rod attacked again. Yang Guo's body was in midair. It was not convenient for him to do anything. He saw that he was in an extremely dangerous situation and decided to test his luck and take a risk. He stretched out his arm and grabbed the golden rod, hacking down with his sword at the same time. If he had the strength of Diankang Yuyan, then the opponent would have definitely let go. The reality was that Darba was much stronger than him. He pulled back and quickly retreated. Yang Guo took a chance and landed lightly on the ground. He was forced into the air 3 times in succession. His life really was within a space of a breath. Though he didn't manage to take away the opponent's weapon, he had escaped the danger. The crowd all breathed out a sigh of relief. Darba saw that his lightness kung fu was excellent and his stances lively. He said, "This kid's kung fu is not bad at all. Who taught you?" He said this in Tibetan. Of course, Yang Guo would not understand. He had assumed that the monk was insulting him and so copied what he said. The tone was perfect. There wasn't a mistake in the order of the words. In the ears of Darba, he heard, "This kid's kung fu is not bad at all. Who taught you?" So he replied, "My master is Jinlun Fawang. I am not a little kid. You should call me Big Monk." Yang Guo didn't want to suffer or be the receiving end of anything, he thought. "I don't care how you insult me. All I've got to do is give back what I get, and I won't lose out to him. You call me a bastard, a pig in another language. I'll do the same to you." He concentrated on what he said, and when he finished, he repeated in Tibetan, "My master is Jinlun Fawang. I am not a little kid. You should call me Big Monk." Darba was surprised. He looked up and down at him. He's definitely a little kid. How could he be a big monk? And how could your master be Jinlun Fawang? So he said, "I am Fawang's first-generation disciple." "What generation are you?" Yang Guo repeated. "I am Fawang's first-generation disciple." "What generation are you?" In the Lama schools of Tibet, they had always talked about reincarnation, especially the reincarnation of the Dalai and Ban Chan, religious figures of the Lama Buddhists, back into this world. The disciples of the Lama schools all believed in reincarnation without any doubts. When Jinlun Fawang was young, he had taken in a disciple. That disciple died before he was 20. Darba and Huo Du had never seen him. They just knew about this matter. Darba is Fawang's second disciple, and Huo Du the third. That was it. When Darba heard these words, he knew that it was his apprentice brother reincarnated, and he thought that if it wasn't him reincarnated, then how could this young kid have such high martial arts? Anyway, how would a young Central Plains kid know such good Tibetan? He slanted his head and studied him for a while. The more he thought, the more likely it seemed to be true. He suddenly flung his golden rod away. He lowered his head and bowed to Yang Guo. He said, "Senior apprentice brother, junior apprentice brother, Darba greets you." Yang Guo was surprised with what just had happened. He thought that the monk couldn't beat him verbally, so lowered his head in defeat. He saw that the monk was extremely respectful to him, and his words were definitely not insults. They were words of respect. There was no need to copy him, and so he nodded and smiled, showing that he accepted Darba's words. The crowd was even more surprised. They didn't understand Tibetan. They didn't know what Yang Guo and the monk were jabbering on about. After talking for a while, he actually managed to tame this monk of terrifyingly divine strength. Only Jinlun Fawang understood what was happening. He knew that his disciple, always straight and simple, had fallen into Yang Guo's trap. So he loudly said, "Darba, he's not your reincarnated apprentice brother. Go and fight him." Darba leapt up in shock and said, "Master, I think he must be apprentice brother. Otherwise, at such a young age, how could he have such a high level of martial arts?" Jinlun Fawang said, "Your apprentice brother's martial arts were much better than yours. That kid is not a match for you." Darba shook his head, not believing him. Jinlun Fawang knew that he was very simple. He wouldn't understand straight away, so he said, "If you don't believe it, go and test him out." Darba has always treated his master's orders as orders from above. Since he said that Yang Guo was not his apprentice brother reincarnated, then most probably he was not. But he had such high martial arts at such a young age, and said that he was his apprentice brother. It was difficult for him to not believe, but he followed his master's orders to go and test out the kids' kung fu. The truth would be revealed by whoever wins or loses, so he raised his hand to Yang Guo and said, "I'm going to duel with you. Victory will decide whether this is the truth or not." Yang Guo saw him stand up and say a few words. He looked very respectful. The words must be of a polite nature, so he repeated what he said flawlessly. Derba heard, "I'm going to duel with you. Victory will decide whether this is the truth or not." When he heard those words, he felt very frightened. Master said senior apprentice brother's martial arts were much better than mine. I definitely won't be able to compete with him. Yang Guo saw that there were signs of fear on his face. He thought, "I'll give him another scare and send him away." So he said, "You have 5 disciples. They are called the 5 clowns of the Tibetan border. A few days ago they were rude towards me on the top of Mount Hua, and I crippled their kung fu. Are those punks still alive?" He spoke in Chinese. Of course, Derba would not understand, so he got one of the Mongolian warriors to translate for him. When Derba heard this, he was even more frightened. After the 5 clowns of the Tibetan border had their bodies crippled by Ouyang Feng and Hong Qigong, when they returned to him, they weren't even able to speak. When Derba examined their injuries, he thought that even his master Jinlun Faoweng didn't have such high internal energy to destroy the 5's veins, yet still keep them alive. The thing that did this must have the ability to move heaven and earth. It could only be a god or a demon. How would he know that Ouyang Feng and Hong Qigong's internal energy was not below his master's? With the 2 combined, the internal energy would be twice as strong as Jinlun Faoweng's. When he heard this, his fear flourished even more. He turned around and looked at Jinlun Faoweng. He saw that there was an angry expression on his face. He didn't dare to not exchange blows with Yang Guo. He could only say, "Please hold back." Yang Guo copied his Tibetan and said, "Please hold back." Guo Fu saw the 2 of them speaking in Tibetan without pause. She went over to Huang Rong and said, "Mother, what are they saying?" Huang Rong knew that Yang Guo was just copying what Derba had said, doing what children do to annoy other people. But she didn't understand why Derba had bowed to him. When she heard her daughter ask about this, she just gave an N sound and said, "Brother Yang is joking with him." Just at this point, Derba suddenly swept his golden rod out towards Yang Guo. He thought that since he's made it clear, the opponent would have been prepared. But Yang Guo had seen that he had a respectful expression on him. He didn't predict that he would suddenly lash out. This attack almost hit him. He leapt back urgently to avoid it. He quickly retreated and hurried forward, immediately unleashing 3 strokes with the sword. Fear was in Derba's heart. He was afraid that his apprentice brother had learnt frightening martial arts from his master, and now that he's reincarnated, he would have even greater abilities. He just defended with his golden rod, not daring to make a single mistake. Many moves passed, and Yang Guo could see that he was just defending and not attacking. Though he didn't understand what was meant by this, he launched himself forward. He floated and darted around, a thrust from the east, an attack from the west. The Jade Maiden sword techniques were used with a clear, gallant air and a flourishing beauty. Over 100 stances were exchanged. Jinlun Faoweng was becoming impatient with the events and shouted, "Derba, quickly counterattack. He's not your senior apprentice brother." Derba's martial arts were well above Yang Guo's, but because there was fear in his heart, he only used half of his abilities, whereas Yang Guo took the chance and fought with everything he had. One of them wanted to take the upper hand, the other kept on retreating and allowing the opponent to attack. Though Yang Guo had the advantage, he was unable to harm him. This convinced Derba further, and he thought that his apprentice brother was holding back. Jinlun Faoweng was furious and loudly shouted, "Counterattack now?" This line was said with a surprising ferociousness. It caused ringing in the ears of the people watching. Derba didn't dare to defy his master's orders. He straightened his golden rod and immediately attacked ferociously. This ferocious attack forced Yang Guo to go on the defensive. He kept on dodging and darted around. The weaknesses in his stances were gradually beginning to show up. Derba saw that his sword stances were slightly loose and flung his rod towards it. Yang Guo couldn't pull back in time and the 2 collided. In a duel, weapons clashing were a regular event, but the rod was too heavy. Yang Guo's sword had kept its distance, not daring to collide with the golden rod. Now when the weapons collided, he felt a sudden surge of a great force, shaking and causing him pain. A pie sound was heard and the iron sword was snapped in 2. Derba called out, "I'm the victor." He pulled back his rod and placed it on the ground vertically, his arms folded and bowed to him. Though he won, he didn't dare to lose his manners in front of his senior apprentice brother. Yang Guo also used Tibetan to say, "I'm the victor." He shot the broken sword towards him. Derba moved his body to avoid it. He was alarmed. How did senior apprentice brother win? Could it be that stance was a decoy, a trap? He saw Yang Guo dashing forward empty-handed, moving his hands. Derba didn't dare to hesitate and quickly used his golden rod to protect his body. In the ancient tomb, Yang Guo learned palm techniques from Xiao Longnu. He reached a state where his 2 palms could keep 81 sparrows within his control, not letting one fly away. This force of nets above and snares below is a secret skill of Lin Keing's. It had never left Mount Zhongnan one step. Now as it was used, indeed it was extremely soft, continuous and unyielding. Though he was empty-handed, the power of it was not inferior to the power he had when he was equipped with a sword. Derba's golden rod created gusts of winds as he used it. But Yang Guo used extremely high-lightness kung fu to move around within the spaces of the rod. Though danger was always within a hair's breadth, the golden rod was not able to touch him at all. He clawed, hacked, slashed, and chopped within his little trapping hand stances as he used the force of nets above and snares below for attack after attack. After another while, Derba's strength increased. Yang Guo, too, got quicker and nimbler. During his time in the ancient tomb, he had refined his internal energy on the chilled jade bed. Now in the middle of battle, the internal energy he spent years refining surged forward and showed itself. Xiao Longnu sat on the stone rock next to the pillar with a slight smile on her face as she watched the two fight. She saw that Yang Guo had fought for a long time without losing. From her pockets, she took out a pair of snow-white gloves and called out, "Guo'er, catch them." Her right hand waved out and shot the gloves towards Yang Guo. The pair of white gloves was made from very fine and very strong white gold silk. Though it was thin, no type of precious blades or sharp swords could harm it. When Hao Datung saw the white gloves in the air, his face changed slightly. Years ago at Qingyang Palace, Xiao Longnu wore these gloves to break his sword, forcing him to almost commit suicide. When he saw them again, he couldn't stop himself from being disturbed. Yang Guo caught the gloves, retreated a step, and he quickly put them on. He used the ancient tomb's sect most ingenious and exquisite kung fu, the beautiful maiden fist. He had used a few stances from this fist technique before to help Lu Wuxia against her enemies, forcing the beggar clan members to retreat. Every stance of this technique is meant to take the aura and impression of a famous, beautiful woman of the past. Originally, when a male uses it, the stances do not look elegant at all. But when Yang Guo was studying this technique, he had changed some of the appearance of the stances. The names and fist techniques were the same, but in the interval between palms and kicks, he changed its delicate and enchanting air into something graceful and stylish. The heroes who were watching became even more perplexed. They saw him suddenly move and then suddenly stop, his expression and aura changing. It was extremely mystifying. A woman's state of mind goes through many things, many changes. Along with the different extraordinary characters of each of the famous historic women, came laughter, as brows were knitted, joy with worry. It was even more difficult to understand and surmise. Incorporating the hundreds and thousand-year-old feelings of these beautiful women into martial arts, and then adding stances that reflect the beauty of goddesses, the mystery surrounding angels. How could ordinary people understand it? Yang Guo used a stance of Hong Yu beats the drum, his 2 arms attacking one after the other. Derba raised his rod and attacked. Yang Guo changed into Hong Fu hurries in the night. Unexpectedly, he charged forward. Derba pushed his rod down vertically to block it. Yang Guo suddenly used Lu Zhu's falling building. He threw himself onto the ground and attacked his lower body. Derba was shocked and thought, how come senior apprentice brother's stances are so hard to comprehend? He quickly leapt up and avoided his left palm's hack. Yang Guo's palms kept on attacking downwards without stop. It was the stance of Wen Jai returns to her man. In total, there were 18 palms. Every stance of his had a background to it. Derba is a Tibetan monk, so how could he know about these histories of the Central Plains? In a flash, he was forced to suddenly go high and then low, east and then west. His arms and legs were all over the place. With the golden silk gloves, whenever Yang Guo had the chance, he would use the stances. Hong Xian steals the box. Mu Lan curved bow. Banjai's poem and Chang Yi steals medicine to snatch away Derba's golden rod, forcing him to roar incessantly, looking embarrassed. The heroes were delighted and called out and cheered to support him. Jinlun Faowang saw that his disciple's martial arts were definitely better than this young man's, but because he was afraid, he kept on allowing the opponent to attack and was forced back embarrassingly. He shouted with a stern tone, "Quickly use the supreme strength rod technique," Derba replied. "Yes." He held the rod's handle with one hand and started to move it around. Using one hand to move the rod was already frightening. Now he used the strength in his two hands and the strength in his waist at the same time. The gusts of winds created by the rod were even louder. The supreme strength rod technique does not have many variations. There are only 8 sweeping stances and 8 thrusting stances, 16 stances in total. But when the 16 stances were used repeatedly, sweeping and thrusting, it forced Yang Guo farther away as he avoided it. He didn't dare to meet the gusts of wind created by the rod, let alone meeting the rod itself. After Diankang Yuyan's oar broke, he had refused to accept his defeat. But when he saw the power of the supreme strength rod technique, he pondered on the fact that his oar stances did not contain anything as fierce and wild as this. He couldn't help but give his respect to him. After another period of fighting, several candles in the main hall were extinguished by the wind created by Derba's rod. Yang Guo just used his lightness kung fu to leap and jump around all over the place, just dodging and evading. But now that he was concentrating on avoiding the rod attacks, how could he attack? All of the heroes of the Central Plains were afraid and didn't make a sound. The Mongolian warriors all cheered thunderously. Yang Guo was faced with no other choice but to keep on retreating. In a short time, he was forced into the corner of the hall. He wanted to change his stances, but there was no way for him to do so. This supreme strength rod technique causes one to carry some degree of blind fury. Once this became evident in Derba, he forgot that he was fighting his reincarnated senior apprentice brother. He saw that Yang Guo had nowhere else to retreat, and then shouted out, "Die!" The golden rod swept across, a ferocious explosion noise was heard, smoke and dust filled the air, and a large hole was made in the wall of hall. In this extremely perilous situation, Yang Guo managed to leap over his head, and even in this extreme situation, he did not forget to repeat what he said in Tibetan, "Die!" That leap was a technique from the 9-yin manual. He and Xiao Longnu had studied the markings of the manual left by Wang Qingyang on the ceiling of the stone chamber in the ancient tomb. They had learned some of the fist, kick, and sword techniques, but there was no one to advise them on practicing the internal aspect. They practiced it, but they did not know if they practiced properly. Right now, he was facing a formidable enemy. How could he dare use it? He would never have thought that in the face of such a danger, he would use it naturally, saving his life in the process. The crowd all thought that Derba would definitely hit his target with this stance. Guo Jing did not wait for the sweep to hit its target and dashed out, wanting to grab his back. He saw a red flash in front of his eyes. Jinlun Faowang's palm was coming towards him. Guo Jing saw that the palm was coming in extremely fast, so he quickly used a stance of seeing the dragon in the field. The two of them did not make a sound as the palms clashed. 2 flashes were seen as the two separated. Guo Jing took 3 steps back while Jinlun Faowang stood his ground steadily. His strength was much stronger than Guo Jing's, and his internal energy was profound, but the proficiency of his palms could not compare with Guo Jing's. Guo Jing took the steps back to disperse the enemy's force and avoid injury. But Jinlun Faowang was too proud. He forced himself to meet this palm solidly, enduring the pain in his chest as he stood there without moving. Even great fighters such as Guo Jing and Jinlun Faowang thought that Yang Guo would definitely meet danger, so one of them flew out to save him. One of them came out to hinder the help. Who would have known that Yang Guo would use such an extraordinary stance, escaping in the space where the golden rod was sweeping next to his body? When the two of them saw that he avoided danger, both were surprised, one was comforted, the other lamented, and both of them retreated. Derba didn't turn around after this failed attack. He swept the golden rod backwards fiercely. Yang Guo saw that this stance was coming in extremely quickly and automatically. He brushed across the floor like a sparrow gliding. He was a foot or so off the floor, going across it evenly, avoiding the golden rod with a few inches to spare. Again, this was kung fu from the 9-yin manual. Huang Rong was surprised and said, "Brother Jing, how come Guo'er knows the 9-yin manual? Did you teach him?" She thought that Guo Jing had taught Yang Guo the 9-yin manual on the way to Mount Zhangnan out of his feelings and memories of the past. Guo Jing said, "No, if I did teach him, why would I keep it from you?" Huang Rong gave an N sound. She knew that her husband had always told the truth to other people. Towards her, he was even more truthful. She saw Yang Guo shifting and moving. Every time he was in danger, he would rely on the martial arts of the 9-yin manual to protect himself. But he showed that he had yet to completely master it. He didn't know how to counterattack according to the manual to achieve victory. Though he was able to protect his life, as the battle continues, he would still end up losing. Huang Rong sighed to herself. Guo'er is really an extraordinary talent. If he followed me for a year or so and learns the dog-beating stick technique and 9-yin manual completely, how on earth would this Tibetan monk be a match for him? At this troubled time, she glanced over at a space and saw the beggar clan traitor Elder Peng in the midst of the Mongolian warriors, his face full of joy. She suddenly had an idea and called out, Guo'er, soul-altering spell. Soul-altering spell. The 9-yin manual has a technique called the soul-altering spell, using the power of the heart and soul to subdue the enemy and achieve victory. Years ago at the beggar clan meeting on Mount Jun, Huang Rong had used this technique to subdue Elder Peng's hypnotizing, fearful heart art. Because of this, when she saw this person, she thought of it. Yang Guo remembered the method of using the soul-altering spell. He didn't have the confidence to completely focus on the enemy and subdue them to gain victory, so he had never practiced it. But he was conscious of Huang Rong's abilities, he thought. Since Auntie Guo mentions this, there must be a reason anyway. Defeat is already definite, so I might as well give it a try. So his body continued avoiding the attacks. In his mind, however, he was purging his thoughts, following the methods stated in the manual, from controlling the limits of the mind to the limits of the real body. Everything became one. There weren't any other thoughts in his mind. At this time, he relied on his natural reactions. When he heard anything, he leapt and darted. When he felt the gust of wind, he hurriedly dodged it, his eyes fixed on the opponent. More stances passed. Derba suddenly felt something was wrong with Yang Guo's movements. He glanced at him and then sent his golden rod forward fiercely. Yang Guo used another stance of the beautiful maiden fist, man's fine waist. His waist swung lightly to avoid the attack. As he's using the soul-altering spell, his body and mind have become one, whatever stances his hands and feet are using. Then the face will reflect whatever feeling and aura the stances exude. Derba saw that his face suddenly seemed to look like a scroll of literature. How on earth could he know that Yang Guo was copying the posture of the Tang's dynasty poet Zhu Leshen's concubine Zio Man? He couldn't stop himself from being taken aback. The golden rod attacked forward towards his head. Yang Guo moved his head to avoid it. He spread his 5 fingers and brushed it through his hair. His 5 fingers then gently waved out, a slight smile on his face. It was a stance of dressing of Li Hua. Zhang Lihua was Li Hu's favorite imperial concubine. Her hair was 7 feet long. Its light could reflect people. Because of her, Li Hu abandoned his political duty and let the country go to ruin. Her beauty was immensely enchanting. Yang Guo's smile infected Derba. He followed and smiled. Yang Guo's face was handsome and striking. When he smiled, he was even more so. Derba's cheekbones were high and his cheeks deep. When the crowd saw him follow Yang Guo and smile, all of them shivered. Yang Guo saw that he was taken aback and stretched out his finger, jabbing out. It was the stance, the divine needle Ping Jai. Derba slanted his body and moved away. His face copied Yang Guo's in making an expression that one has when concentrating on sewing. Guo Jing expressed his joy. He nodded his head and concentrated on the 2 people in the middle of the hall without blinking. The soul-altering spell uses the power of the heart and soul to affect the opponent. If the opponent's mind and will was strong and still, it would not be effective. If the opponent's internal energy was higher as well, the attack would be reflected back towards the user, and they, instead, would fall under the control of the other person. When 2 people are dueling, if the user's martial arts were better than the other person's, then they could defeat them through weaponry, fists, and kicks. There would be no need to resort to this technique. If, on the other hand, the user's internal energy was weaker, they wouldn't dare use this technique hastily. Though this technique is deep and profound, it didn't have much use when facing a superior enemy. Derba had heard Yang Guo speak a whole lot of Tibetan, and had believed with some certainty that he was the reincarnation of his senior apprentice brother. But because there was fear in his heart, he was affected very quickly by this technique. Yang Guo was able to succeed in one go. If the target was Huo Du, Yang Guo would definitely be in danger because he had never practiced this technique before, and his internal energy could not match Huo Du's. Yang Guo performed the beautiful maiden fist. Whatever he did, whether his steps made lotuses or he moved like a willow, Derba copied. The watching crowd was startled and amused. Guo'er had felt this was extremely amusing. She said to her mother, "Mother, this technique of Brother Yang is really something. Why don't you teach me?" Huang Rong said, "If you learned the soul-altering spell, heaven and earth would definitely be turned upside down. It would be trouble, you would suffer, and so would others." She held her hand and said seriously, "Don't think this is fun. Brother Yang and that monk are fighting with their lives. This is much more dangerous than fighting with sabers and swords." Guo'er stuck her tongue out and watched Yang Guo. She still felt this was fun. When Yang Guo smiled, so did Derba. When Yang Guo was angry, Derba was angry, so she copied him. How would she know how powerful the soul-affecting spell was? She copied just 2 movements when her heart and mind became unclear and blurred, and she started to take steps towards the center of the hall. Huang Rong was shocked and quickly pulled her hand. At this time, Guo'er was being controlled and used her strength to fling her mother away. Huang Rong twisted her hand and Guo'er's wrist, turning her face around, stopping her from facing Yang Guo. Guo'er struggled for a bit. The hold restricted her veins' movements. She fainted and fell unconscious into her mother's arms. Right now, Derba was completely controlled by Yang Guo. When he saw Yang Guo use a stance of Zai Zai offers the heart, immediately followed by Dong she knits her brows. Then another stance of descending goddess subtle step. He copied the steps and scurries, gliding like a frightened crow, slithering like a slippery snake. Jinlun Fawang had noticed something was wrong long ago. He had called out many times, but Derba acted like he didn't hear. Yang Guo saw that time had come. He suddenly used a stance of Cow Ling slices her nose, and he waved his hand and cut a palm across his face. A left palm cut across, followed by a right without stop. In ancient times, a man called Cao Wenshu had a wife whose last name was Ling after her husband died. She cut off her nose, showing that she will never marry again. This stance originally uses the cut across the face to repel an enemy's attack. However, Yang Guo had made the cuts closer to his face by a few inches, cutting across his cheeks. It looked like it was a very heavy blow, but in reality he just lightly brushed across his face. But how would Derba know this? His palms attacked his own face with a great force. He possessed frightening strength. Every palm had a force of over 100 kilos, 220 pounds. Over 10 palms later, he couldn't stand it, and he knocked himself dizzily to the floor. Yang Guo quietly retreated a few steps and sat next to Xiao Longnu. His right hand supported his cheek. His left waved out lightly. He gave a long sigh, a lonely feeling on his face. This was the last stance of the beautiful maiden fist. It's called secluded in the ancient tomb. But this stance was invented by Yang Guo himself. Lin Keiying did not know about this, and Xiao Longnu too did not know it. When Yang Guo completed learning the beautiful maiden fist, he thought about how ancestor grandma excelled in beauty and grace. She did not lose compared to beauties of the ancient times. She was not in this fist technique. The beauty aspect is not really complete, so he devised his own stance. Though he said he invented this stance because of Lin Keiying, the aura and feeling of this stance was that of his master Xiao Longnu. When Xiao Longnu first saw this, she just gave a little smile and let him be. The heroes all cheered out in delight and called out, "We've won the second round as well." The position of Chancellor of Wulin belongs to the skilled fighters of the song. You Mongols better crawl out of here and don't show your face again in the Central Plains. The Mongolian warriors dashed out during this commotion and carried Derba back. Jinlun Fawang saw that his 2 disciples had lost, but not because their kung fu wasn't good enough. They lost in some stupid way. He was furious, but his face showed no signs of emotion. He sat on the chair and called out, "Young man, who is your master?" Apart from excelling in martial arts, he was also knowledgeable in many things. He even knew how to speak Chinese. Yang Guo pointed to Xiao Longnu and laughed as he said, "This is my master, come and bow down to the Chancellor of Wulin." Jinlun Fawang saw that Xiao Longnu was beautiful and delicate. She was younger than Yang Guo. He did not believe that she was his master and thought, "The Han of the Central Plains are very sly and crafty, but can you trick me?" He suddenly stood up. A clanking sound was heard as he took out a gold wheel from his compartment. The golden wheel was 1.5 feet in diameter, cast out of solid gold. The Tibetan scriptures were inscribed on the wheel. In the middle were 9 little spheres. A shake of the hands and a prolonged noise was heard. Jinlun Fawang pointed to Xiao Longnu and said, "Huh, how is that this little girl is worthy of being the Chancellor of Wulin? If you can withstand 10 stances of my golden wheel, I'll acknowledge you as the Chancellor of Wulin." Yang Guo laughed and said, I've already won 2 rounds, 2 out of 3, and your side said that at the start. So why are you trying to deny it? Jinlun Faowing said, I want to test out her kung fu and see if she has the ability to take this task on. Xiao Longnu did not know that Jinlun Faowing's abilities are shockingly brilliant. Neither did she know what the Chancellor of Wulin was. The thought of whether to take this on had never crossed her mind. When she heard him say that he wanted to test whether she can withstand 10 stances of his golden wheel, she stood up and said, In that case, I'll have a try. Jinlun Faowing said, If you can't withstand 10 stances, what then? Xiao Longnu said, If I can't, I can't, what about it? Though she treated Yang Guo with love and compassion, when it comes to other things she didn't have a care. The heroes of the Central Plains and the Mongolian warriors did not know that this was her character, and they saw that she didn't give Jinlun Faowing any consideration. They thought that she really must possess deep and profound martial arts. After seeing Yang Guo use the soul-altering spell, others thought that she knew witchcraft and was a young witch. At that time, they all burst into conversation. Jinlun Faowing really was afraid that she knew witchcraft. He started to chant a mantra, Jai Li Gu Lu, Jai Li Gu Lu. He recited the devil-subduing mantra from the Tibetan scriptures. Yang Guo heard this and thought that the monk was insulting his master in Tibetan, so he quickly concentrated and remembered every single word clearly. Once Jinlun Faowing finished reciting the mantra, from the golden wheel a period of lang-lang noises was heard. He shouted, Young man, I'm about to start. He said these 2 words in Chinese. Yang Guo shook his hand. He didn't want to speak a word. He was afraid that once his concentration was disturbed, he would forget the passage of Tibetan he had just remembered. He then began to recite every word and tone of the passage. Derba regained consciousness at this time. He saw that his master was holding a golden wheel and was about to fight someone. Then he heard Yang Guo recite the devil-subduing mantra from the Tibetan scriptures. This was something that was kept within the school, and it was never passed on to outsiders. If Yang Guo wasn't the reincarnation of senior apprentice brother, how would he know this mantra? He quickly jumped up in urgency and knelt down in front of his master. He called out, Master, he really is the reincarnation of senior apprentice brother. Take him back into the school. Jinlun Faowing angrily said, Rubbish. You don't even know that you've fallen into his trap. Derba said, It really is, this is the truth, it's definitely not a lie. Faowing saw that he was confused. He picked him up by the back and flung him away. Derba weighed about 100 kilos, 220 pounds. The way he was tossed lightly aside was as if he weighed nothing. The heroes had seen the frightening strength of Derba when he fought Diankang Yuyan and Yang Guo, but the toss by Jinlun Faowing showed that his strength was even stronger. They looked at the delicate appearance of Xiao Longnu without even mentioning the 10 stances. If he just used force to blow at her, she would be blown over, and they couldn't stop themselves from worrying about her.